research. So there's a number of factors that kind of coalesced in some council members. Introduced the idea initially. I said, I'm on board.
You could listen and in a way that speaks or something like realize that we couldn't listen to doing our chores. You know,
Well, that's, we're going through this process of trying to understand all the
in a way,
we've never presented it over a decade.
this is a simplicity from which comes from the birth. So that's what I now. That's my philosophy.
That's what the other component of why we're bringing this forward. I wanted to have it.
When you said like you should go, let's just go off there right now.
Kids keep buying them. Kids keep buying them. So, are you setting up to do this too? Yeah.
Hey.
Or the lobbying ordinance, or the implementation ordinance, or the ballot. I just love it. It's like, that was an ethical issue. It feels a campaign control issue, but everything.
Yeah, how about you?
It's great. Both get a cold, and one falls on his face, and busts his teeth up. This was Monday, Tuesday, I was out. Monday in the morning of Tuesday. X-rays, and it was fine. But it was the first time I had that sort of like pop paper where I was like, what do you know? Take it back. Like, what's your job? You know? It's like, Raphael gets bit at me. And I'm telling him, whatever, it's my and I'm like, how did you take this hat?
Audio check 1 2 3 4. Audio check 1 2 3 4.
Yeah, and then like, geez, I'm like, yeah, you got 25, 30, 40.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
That'd be self-sufficient.
I want to live with it.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the Rules Committee meeting of August 26, 2026. I'm Joel LaCava, Council Member for District 1, Chair of the committee. Our committee's liaison, Sarah Jordan, will go over instruction for today's meeting.
Thank you, Council President. While members of the public are able to attend the meeting in person, this meeting is being televised and live streamed on the city's website, and the Council administration will continue to make arrangements for the public to comment using the Zoom webinar platform. Members of the public who wish to provide virtual testimony must enter the virtual queue by raising their hand before the virtual queue closes. The queue will close when the last virtual speaker finishes speaking or 5 minutes after in-person testimony ends, whichever occurs first. This will allow for better meeting management between the two platforms and ensure the committee is able to manage and conduct city business. We appreciate the public's cooperation. Chair.
All right, thank you. I will now call the Rules Committee meeting on Wednesday, August 26, 2026 to order and call the roll. Vice Chair, Council President Pro Tem Kent Lee. Here. Councilmember Raul Campillo. Here. Councilmember Vivian Moreno.
Present.
Councilmember Sean Hilo Rivera is not yet in attendance, and I am present. Also attending the meeting today, Jillian Andolina with the Office of the Independent Budget Analyst, Kathy Steinman with the Office of the City Attorney, Matt Yagan with the Office of Mayor Todd Gloria, and Abby Order, Committee Consultant. This is our first meeting out of the summer recess, and I'm not gonna throw shade on any other committee, but we come in hot. We have got a big agenda with big items here because we're ready to go to work. That's what the Rules Committee does. And because of that, and as a note to the public, we will be taking the agenda out of order today. Non-agenda public comment will be taken at the end of our meeting, and the order we'll be hearing items is 1, 2, 4, and 3. So again, we'll be hearing items 1, 2, 4, and 3, and then non-agenda public comment will be taken after our agenda items are heard. We want to get right down to work. So with that, Sarah, please continue with public comment instructions.
Thank you, Chair. If you are in person, please complete a speaker slip located at the entrance of the committee room and place it in the box on the table at the front of the room. Please do so in a timely manner to ensure proper meeting management. Once any organized presentations have concluded, no other organized presentations will be taken. We have received no organized presentations today. In-person testimony will conclude before virtual testimony begins, and no further in-person testimony will be taken once the committee begins virtual testimony. Members of the public can also join the webinar by computer, tablet, or smartphone by accessing the link which is listed online in the preamble language of the agenda on the city's webpage. If you need to participate by telephone, you may dial 1-669-254-5252, inputting webinar ID 160-439-9420#. This information is also available on the agenda and will appear on the screen during the public comment period for each agenda item. Please note that if you're watching via City TV 24 or online, there may be delay. Please participate via the audio on your phone and mute your TV or computer when it's your turn to speak. If you wish to speak to a particular item, please wait for that item to be called and then raise your hand to speak by tapping the raise your hand icon if you're a Zoom participant, or if you're a called participant by pressing *9 on your phone. If you raise your hand during a non-comment period, your hand will be lowered. Chair.
All right, thank you, Sarah, for those instructions. And as a friendly reminder, non-agenda public comment is the opportunity to speak on items within the purview of the Rules Committee, but when you speak to a docketed agenda item, please focus your comments on that docket. Help committee members decide whether to support, oppose, or amend an item that is before us. With that, a quorum is now present. We will now move to committee members, mayoral staff, city attorney, independent budget analyst. Any comments? Not seeing any. Are there... With that, do we have any requests for continuance? Not hearing any. So we have one item on the consent agenda. Sarah, please introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 1 is the approval of the committee minutes of June 24th, 2026.
This item will remain on the consent agenda unless a committee member requests to pull it off consent, and I don't see any requests to pull off minutes. So with that, Sarah, please proceed with public comment.
Thank you, Chair. We've received one slip here in the committee room, so we will begin in-person testimony with allegedly Audra. Please approach the lectern. You will have 1 minute to speak to item number 1.
I think in your minutes, this is weird, that you guys could do better, whoever is writing what the people are saying, because there's sometimes you use words that kind of describe what the person is, how they feel about it, whether or not they would be in favor or opposed to what they're talking about. Like, Blair Beekman, it just says he gave comment on the future of surveillance technology and community energy. He's always extremely concerned about this kind of stuff, and I feel like when you put it like that, you're just acting like he's just kind of talking about it, that it's not really important either way, that he's just kind of giving you guys information. And so you guys do that a lot, even with things that I say. I'm not in this one, but I just find that, you know, you need to be a little bit more descriptive so that if you read it, you could understand how they actually feel about what they were talking about.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those in the virtual queue to indicate if they wish to provide comment on item number 1, as we are completed with in-person testimony. We will begin virtual testimony with Blair Beekman. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Thanks for DRA's words. Blair Beekman gave comment on how to work towards better future goals of surveillance technology and community energy. Things like that, I think, is what she's considering. I wanted to consider item 5, annual salary review of positions with salaries established by council. If I can try to add a bit to item 5, how this item can improve for the future. I've described yesterday, it's my hope that our city workers can learn to take a $25 cut in salary. That's $300 a year. With 13,000 workers, that's like $4 million in savings. And that way we can practice and promote health benefits and retirement plans and not take those away. I think that should be a mandatory part of government work, and it should be respected and respectful. And we should work on a small salary cut instead. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your testimony. And with no other hands in the queue for item number 1, this concludes public testimony.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent item. Councilmember Moreno, the second by Councilmember Campillo. With that, no other comments. We'll just take a voice vote. All in favor of approving the consent item, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously 4-0 with Councilmember Elo Rivera absent. So let's go next to discussion item, to the discussion agenda. My apologies. Sarah, please introduce item 2.
Thank you, Chair LaCava. Item number 2, amendments to the San Diego Municipal Code related to the city's Ethics Commission. And if you're watching on City TV or the live stream online and you'd like to dial in to speak, please call 1-669-254-5252, inputting webinar ID 160-439-9420. Chair.
All right, with that, I see you're all set up, so please introduce yourselves for the record and let us know how much time you need.
Thank you. My name's Bryn Kervin. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego Ethics Commission. I would like 20 minutes, please.
All right, begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Council President LaCava, Council President Pro Tem Lee, and members of the Rules Committee. Thank you for scheduling the Ethics Commission's legislative package.
Oh, great. I'm sorry. Could you turn your mic on?
It is on.
Oh. Or maybe a little
Do I
closer.
need to have it closer?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for scheduling the Ethics Commission's legislative package and allowing me to speak today on behalf of the Commission. Also present here to my right, Megan Curran, our Legislative and Public Affairs Program Manager, and our Council, Christina Cameron of Devaney, Pate, Morris, and Cameron. We are here to present our proposed amendments to the municipal code that relate to the Ethics Commission's work, proposed actions for this committee, and to identify the policy questions we're asking the committee to consider, and also council. The red line document attached to the staff report reflects all proposed changes. We'll be focusing on what we believe are the most central amendments for you to consider. And we understand you have a full agenda today, as Council President mentioned earlier. So I will be covering the slides at a high level quickly, but also will be happy to answer detailed questions. The Ethics Commission seeks direction in 3 categories of proposed changes to the municipal code. The first category involves the conforming the municipal code to Charter Section 41.3, which was incorporated following the passage of Measure D in 2024. The second category involves amendments to implement operational needs of the Commission, and Category 3 deals with impacts to the working conditions of employees represented by the Deputy City Attorneys Association. Senior Deputy City Attorney Joan Dawson sagely suggested how we and the committee and the council tackle these amendments. Once policy questions are resolved, we suggest that the amendments be phased in with 2 ordinances. Vulnerable issues that will arise will fall into Ordinance B, non-discretionary provisions related to the implementation of Measure D. We're using the term D, and the municipal code needs to be up committee and council's authority to decide how those changes are implemented. There are 5 areas of changes that resulted from Measure D, central changes. Action with respect to Category 2 changes, the proposed action is that the commission would like to work with the city attorney's office on the discretionary operational changes that will also be part of Ordinance A, and we will walk through those 7 items in later slides. And last, with respect to Category 3, the commission is requesting to work with the city attorney's office to prepare Ordinance B, which would be and will require the meet and confer process under the MMBA before council adopts Ordinance B. Before we launch into the meat of the proposed amendments, I wanted to address, how we got here. In 2001, the Ethics Commission was created by City Council, and that was established through an ordinance that was entitled Ethics Commission. That ordinance and remains the establishing ordinance of the commission, and also houses the enforcement provisions of the commission. So that ordinance serves 2 purposes. The charter section that governed the commission at the time, 41D, was passed by voters in 2002. And the ethics ordinance that we are all intimately familiar with, that governs our conduct as public officials, was adopted by council later in 2002. Of significance to the amendments today is what happened in 2005. The Deputy City Attorneys Association, when the commission was created, was part of the regulated community, became a recognized employee organization, and is now today remains represented under the jurisdiction of the commission from 2001. I want to thank the commissioners, staff, our council, former City Attorney Mara Elliott, and former Executive Director Sharon Spivak for all of the work that was put into getting us here today. I also wanted to briefly mention and remind everyone about Measure D and its intended purpose. It was to strengthen the independence of the San Diego Ethics Commission by transferring key investigative and administrative powers from to the Executive Director. So getting on to the specific proposed amendments of Ordinance A, one of the central things that Measure D did was to authorize the commission to adopt its own policies and regulations consistent with the requirements of applicable California laws. Measure D granted the commission body policy-making power. Measure D commission to select and appoint its providing exclusive hiring authority. It ensures the executive. Third, Measure D authorized the executive director to open investigations, which was another key facet. The investigatory decision-making power to the executive director and transferred that from the commission to the executive director. Measure D also authorized the executive director to issue subpoenas and subpoenas ducis tecum. In line with transferring this investigatory decision-making power, the executive director opens investigations and also decides how those investigations are carried out through giving the executive director subpoena power. Last, and something that council is intimately familiar with, is the requirement that council allocate funds sufficient for the commissions to carry out its responsibilities. The current language in the municipal code is that the commission will have staff of no less than 3. We cannot fulfill our roles with 3 staff. We currently have 6 staff, including myself. The commission, in an attempt to flesh out what sufficient funding means and to mirror the original language of the municipal code, proposes that the language be a minimum of 6, which is our current level of funding. As a footnote, I would note that we are able to fulfill our duties and our mandates currently. However, just as any other independent department or mayoral department for that matter, we could be doing more for our regulated community and the public with additional resources. I want to now change gears and move on to what we are calling discretionary operational changes in general. At the time that Measure D was, the ballot measure that became Measure D was introduced at council, former executive director Sharon Spivak discussed the intent that following Measure D, that operational changes would be helpful to the work of the commission, and that if they could also be accomplished at the same time, that would provide efficiency. So the first being the issue of appointment of the commission members. This was originally, as you may recall, discussed as part of the ballot measure. It ended up falling out of the ballot measure language. However, it is my understanding that there was an intent to revisit the idea that the selection process be studied and potentially changed. The commission undertook rigorous research, benchmarking, and discussion on the selection process, focusing on the selection process, and ultimately came to the conclusion that it would not make any proposed changes to that selection process and respects the power and authority of this committee and the full council to implement changes that it feels and believes are important to make. Moving on to qualifications of commission members. This is a little different from the qualifications that are incorporated into Section 260404, which is what I was just talking about, the appointment process. These are different in the sense that in the original strike-through draft that the city attorney proposed, that there be language that further fleshes out what high moral character and integrity means. So the current municipal code simply states that. And the idea was that it would be helpful to flesh that out. And so in carrying out that intent, the commission looked at the language from other commissions within the city of San Diego and took as a template the Commission on Police Practices qualifications provisions. And the commission is proposing that there be a background check Moving on to removal of commission members. The current municipal code does govern removal. However, the provisions are somewhat bare bones, and the commission was looking for something a little bit more robust. So again, we looked to the Commission on Police Practices and adapted their language to suit the unique needs of the commission. And now the commission is proposing two paths for removal, one being through the commission and one being through the council president and ultimately the full council. Moving on, given the changes in duties and responsibilities of both the executive director and the commission itself, the commission wishes to further delineate the duties, responsibilities of the executive director, the commissioners, and staff. And so that is the set of amendments under 260414. Getting into the enforcement provisions of the division, the commission, as you can imagine, has a statute of limitations, just as any regulatory agency. Ours is 3 years, so that means that the commission is unable to bring action against a potential individual who allegedly has committed a violation within 3 years. Other ethics commissions actually allow to have that time period told, meaning the clock would stop under certain circumstances. And it would be helpful to the commission under certain circumstances to basically stop that clock, so it gives more flexibility in enforcement and allows the commission under the appropriate circumstances to continue actions against potential violators. So those are really the most substantive of the commission's proposed changes. There are some things that the commission would like to move into a procedural manual, because it really focuses on how the staff carries out its duties rather than what the law actually requires. And so there is that category of changes. And last, again, non-substantive amendments would include renumbering our division. It's our understanding the city attorney likes to have everything consecutively numbered, which I certainly can respect. That makes sense. Ours is not, that's currently. So we expect that to change. We would like some clarifying language. There's some areas that could have more harmony with the rest of the municipal code. And other corrections and clarifications that appear on the slide. All right, moving on to Ordinance B. As I mentioned, the City Attorneys Association, which is currently under the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission, will direct labor relations to engage in a process under the MMBA before adoption of Ordinance B. Essentially, we want to work with the city attorney on these three categories of amendments, and for your time and allowing us to present these matters.
All right, thank you for the work. This was a lot of work on your behalf, and thank you for the presentation this morning. So first we're going to go to the Office of the IBA for comments.
Thank you so much, Council President. Jillian Andolino with the Office of the IBA. I have very brief comments on this item highlighting the proposed municipal code changes related to the requirement in the city charter that the council allocate funds sufficient for the commission, which is categorized under amendments without discretionary determination by the council. Currently, the municipal code states that the council must appropriate a reasonable budget for the commission, and it goes on to require that the commission employ at least 3 positions, including the executive director. The proposed amendments increase this minimum requirement to 6 positions to include the executive director and 1 employee for each of the commission's 5 core services. To clarify that this is in fact a decision point for the council, since it goes level in the municipal code than what is currently required. However, we note that this is in line with the Commission's current staffing levels, so there's no fiscal impact associated with the change. We understand that the change appears to be intended to simply modernize the municipal code to reflect current staffing levels. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for that input. We always appreciate that. And before we go to public comment, I failed to note, as you heard, the presentation does refer to ordinances A and B. So public comment can refer to both A and B or one or the other. And committee discussion should also be on one or both of the two ordinances that have been introduced. There will be two separate motions and two separate votes, just to clarify that. I think we're kind of used to that process. So with that.
Thank you, Chair. No organized presentations were submitted for this item, so we'll move to in-person public testimony, beginning with allegedly Audra. You will be followed by Amanda. Each speaker will have 1 minute to speak to item number 2.
It's interesting to see how government does business. Especially when you guys are selecting these people, and it's interesting that they're volunteers, and then you want to have staff for them get paid. So they're like volunteering their time, not getting paid, and then they have some staff that gets paid, and then the executive director, who they get to pick. And then I don't know that the mayor or you guys should be, I feel like this should be something independent from you guys if we're gonna really be holding people accountable, because there's conflicts of interest that happen all the time. And if you guys are selecting these people, then it could give room to obfuscate and for people not to fully be holding people accountable. I don't know, I just find it interesting, especially just with this paying of some people and not the others. What would, make them want to work as hard as somebody else in that commission? I don't know, it's just interesting to learn about this stuff.
Thank you. Amanda?
Hi, good morning, Council. I'm Amanda, District 7. I'm going to speak to Ordinance A and B. So I didn't realize until I was digging into Measure D that the way the Ethics Commission had been being appointed was that the commission members are nominated, from a pool nominated by the City Council and City Attorney. Kind of wild that we let you guys handpick your own watchdogs. Kind of like if the Padres got to handpick every umpire from a pre-screened pool. Doesn't seem very ethical to me. Measure D says that City Council will update municipal code to establish appointment process. I like the initial suggestion that City Council had rejected of having a panel of retired judges. You guys didn't mention that, but I guess City Council had rejected that. Since you guys didn't like that, I might suggest a process similar to what they do in Milwaukee, where the mayor requests A.
That does conclude your time.
That's A and B.
It's 1 minute. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Any additional comments can be submitted to councilcommittee@sandiego.gov.
They will.
I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those in the virtual queue to indicate if they wish to provide comment on item number 2. Each speaker will have 1 minute. We will begin virtual testimony with Kathleen Lippett. Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, committee. I'd certainly like to echo Audra's comments that it would be wise to consider that there are paid city staff concurrent with volunteers. And the second comment that the process of retired judges would be far better and far more independent than the council making those choices. One of the other issues has been that and maybe they didn't have enough staff, but the planning commissions have never been fined for conflicts of interest related to marijuana. And yet we saw a number of planning commissioners who were simultaneously working for the city at the same time they were representing marijuana interests at county meetings and other meetings around the city. So that needs to have closer attention. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Victoria Labruzzo. Please unmute and begin.
Good morning, council members, Council President LaCava, Victoria Labruzzo, District 5. I have a concern with the proposed minimum staffing requirement. The current, I believe, approximate cost of the personnel is $1.8 million annually. So, adding this as a minimum actually, I didn't see this as mentioned in Measure D requiring that minimum, and I don't think that we should do that now. Given our significant budget deficits, I believe those decisions should remain part of the annual budget process rather than being locked into an ordinance. This would be locked into future city councils, future mayors, et cetera. So I would object to locking that minimum full-time employee count into the ordinance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Blair Beekman, please unmute and begin.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I think the commission process really has a really good potential to serve the public cause and create a community process in our lives. I hope that can be respected in this decision making, and that all voices can be a part of the process. That's key. I hope the commission's ideas and opinions on items can be more respected and can have more weight over time in city government lives. And in being from San Jose, there was a real problem in that commissions, they would do their work, but their final votes and choices were like already being worked on by city government staff. So their commission process was just kind of a big circle, and it didn't really work towards anything. And I think we have to, our commission process really has to be vibrant and allow that public process to really help and foster and grow. And we got to help that manage that well. Thanks.
Madison, please unmute and begin.
Hey, so obviously it is important that the people responsible for overseeing government ethics need to be independent and qualified and held to clear standards themselves. And it's especially important because the Ethics Commission is responsible for overseeing the conduct of the very people who ultimately make our city's rules. Voters recognized that when they overwhelmingly approved Measure D in 2024, strengthening the independence of the Ethics Commission and giving it greater control over its investigations, leadership, and procedures. We should never have to wonder whether an ethics watchdog is reluctant to act because of the political power of the person being investigated. San Diegans should be able to trust that our system of government has an independent mechanism for holding public officials accountable. So I do encourage the council to preserve that independence and make the standards as clear and strong as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And the final hand in our queue for item number 2 is Judy Strang. Please unmute and begin.
Good morning, Rules Committee. As I looked at the 13-page staff report as well as the PowerPoint to understand more clearly, and as I understand it, we're only talking about Ordinance A now, I suppose, and we'll look at Ordinance B for a separate vote. And that Ordinance A, of course, in my mind, primarily deals with the appointment and confirmation of the commission. I'm concerned that it seems to be what we're moving towards is the idea that the mayor picks the pool from which the nominees will then be determined. And I think that's not a broad enough group to do the suggestion of this pool. We've had many questions over the last 24 hours regarding the mayor's role in selection. I don't think now's the time to make it a bigger problem.
Thank you. And Chair, with the timer exhausted, this concludes testimony on item 2.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. I'll kick this off. So first, again, let me thank you, Brent, Megan, and the Ethics Commission for your work in bringing these amendments. You know, it's one thing to get a ballot measure passed, but then to actually interpret that ballot measure and put it into the form of an ordinance is incredibly hard work. And then the updating that you did in terms of those, what you refer to as discretionary, to really make sure the package as a whole is complete and meets what we consider to be our today's standards is a lot of work. So I very much appreciate that. As a quick comment about a number of the public comments, the Ethics Commission has been in place for, as you showed in your initial presentation, for 20 years. And I didn't hear anybody say that there was a problem with how it's been operating for 20 years. I appreciate some people may not have been paying attention. This may be their first time they're actually paying attention to the Ethics Commission. But what we did with Measure D was to actually take the foundational work of something that was working very well and make it even stronger and more independent. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I want to kind of set the table with that. I was proud to partner with City Attorney Maura Elliott and the former Executive Director of Ethics Commission, Sharon Spivak, to bring forward that Measure D, which passed overwhelmingly with a 72% of the vote in 2024.
Tricked us.
Right. Oh, I thought I heard something. Measure D strengthened the independence of the City of San Diego's Ethics Commission by empowering it to control its investigations and resources without political interference. Today marks the next step to implement the will of the voters, and I want to recognize that important work. I also note that I'll support the discretionary elements as good practice and needed changes. And again, thank you for that extra element in today's action. When measures were in development, there was substantial conversation around the appointment process that you referred to. And I appreciate the conversation that was held by the commissioners and the benchmarking done by the Ethics Commission staff back in the day. And based on their independent guidance, it seems the appointment process is working and does not need to be changed, and why it was not done in Measure D. But let me shift to a challenge that did emerge as recently as 2023. I take seriously the responsibility to keep the commission fully seated. This is key for the commissioners to do their work. Currently, under our municipal code, the pool of applicants who are both qualified and willing to sit on the commission can be painfully limited. Again, remember what happened in 2023 when we were trying to fill one of those vacant seats, and I will not repeat what that was. But it certainly indicated there could be potentially a problem. Not one that we're going to solve today, but I want to lay the foundation of how we might attack that. One of the dictates in the charter is that the commissioners must have the, quote, independence, experience, and technical expertise, end quote, to carry out its mission. That's very, very important. I want to have an open discussion on how to balance the need for independence, experience, and technical expertise with sufficient broad pool of qualified and interested candidates. Keep in mind, there's two different things. You have to be qualified, and then you actually have to be interested. Not everybody is willing to serve, as some of the public speakers noted, to volunteer your time for this important work. So with that, would the Ethics Commission staff be able to do some additional benchmarking before Ordinance A comes to council on the qualifications of commissioners from other peer cities, and discuss with the commissioners for their recommendations on the possibility of expanding either qualifications or categories?
Yes, of course.
Terrific, thank you. So thank you for that, and I look forward to a conversation as you complete your research. I also note that the language in the charter delegates power to the executive director who, quote, who shall act in accordance with the policies and regulations adopted by the Ethics Commission and with applicable law, end quote. Applicable law is not clearly defined. Laws are changing, but given the council's responsibility to both provide independence to the commission while recognizing that it's still subsidiary to the city, some clarity on the language would be helpful, I believe, to everyone. The commission develops policies and procedures, meets and confers, handles sensitive topics affecting personnel. I would like to see some language in the ordinance when it comes to council clarifying the charter wording of, quote, applicable law, especially as it relates to employee protections and labor laws. So with that, I will move staff recommendation on sub-item A and request that the city attorney's office add language clarifying the applicability of state and federal laws, including labor laws. In closing, I am proud of the fact that with the formation of the Ethics Commission in 2002 and the strengthening achieved through Measure D, we have a commission that is independent, political influence is minimized, if not eliminated, and the executive director can move swiftly when the need arises, and so much more embedded in Measure D. With the passage of Measure D and incorporating the language into the municipal code, we have raised the bar of what an ethics commission can and should be. again, thank you, Bryn, Megan, and the commission staff and the commissioners for all the work you did to bring this item forward. So with that, that is my motion on sub item A. We'll go next to Councilmember Elo Rivera.
All right, thank you, Council President. Bryn, thank you for the work on this and the presentation. I'll start by seconding the motion, and just wanted to ask one question. Discretionary amendments under qualifications, it says add disqualification criteria based on criminal and civil history, strengthen removal for non-performance language, broaden political contributions / campaign restrictions. All of that sounds good on its face. The one question I did have was about how it would be determined what type of criminal or civil history would disqualify a commissioner.
In the red line for 260406, it delineates that very clearly. I can go through the list. If any applicant, nominee, or commission member is disqualified from appointment for any reason under this section, the city must provide a written explanation of the reason or reasons to the disqualified person. Disqualification from service as a commission member based on a person's civil or criminal history shall be only for one or more of the following reasons. They have been convicted of a felony. They're required to register as a sex offender. They've been convicted of criminal fraud, including but not limited to check fraud and some other fraud categories I won't mention now, because that would make my response longer. They've been found liable in a court of law for civil fraud, including but not limited to actual fraud. And last, they've been found in violation by state or local judicial or administrative body of any of the following: misuse of public position for personal interest, misuse of city records, or a violation of federal or state laws relating to confidentiality or city employee privacy.
Good, thank you. So, some crimes of moral turpitude and then some civil violations that basically are the same sort of civil violations.
True, but you can have a felony that's not a crime of moral turpitude, so it's probably a little broader than that.
So on the felony piece, I think that's it's any, as you read it, it's any felony.
Yes.
Okay. I think it would be good to spend a little bit of time with that, especially looking backwards at what might have been a felony in the past is not a crime of moral turpitude and would not necessarily be something that would be disqualifying today. Especially if, as the council president said, everyone needs to be qualified. All the other qualifications would still need to be in the mix. So I just think it'd be worth taking a look at that. I also just wanted to speak to a couple folks raised the initial idea of retired judges. We had a conversation about this. One of the goals of this council since I've been here has been to ensure that the commissions, the city's commissions are as reflective of the city's population as possible. Retired judges are about as, I don't want to say they're the least reflective in terms of the diversity of the city, but it is not a pool of people that necessarily is reflective of broader society. So it would be a narrowing of the pool of folks who could serve in such a way that would make it very difficult to ensure that the qualified people who sit on the commission are reflective of San Diego. And one might ask, why does that matter? That ethics commission, they're just enforcing the rules. Well, we know that those things such as this, to have a diversity of life experiences that they are using to help apply the rules. That doesn't mean that they're applying the rules differently. It just means that they've got a group that is more reflective of the city's population is a group that is better able to enforce the rules in a way that is fair and just for everyone. So I just wanted to speak to that thing because I think it's one of those ideas that's on its face, might sound good, but I think when you dig a little bit deeper,
it actually moves us away from a goal that most people agree with, which is having these bodies be reflective of San Diego's population. So thank you again, Brent, for the work. Thank you, Council President, for your comments and your work on this as well. And I, again, second the motion.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Hilo Rivera on that second. I don't see anybody else on the lights. City Attorney normally makes a comment, so I'm going to make that comment. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That there's only been a broad overview by City Attorney's Office, and as always, if this gets passed Rules Committee, then they'll take the deeper dive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yes, this is just a draft. We need to further review.
Okay. With that, Council President Pro Tem Lee.
I'll keep it short. Thank you, Council President. And thank you to you and the Commission for taking the time to review and bring these forward, especially as the follow-up to Measure D. And I think it's just helpful to understand how these items, as adjustments to the municipal code in particular, will help to align with the measure. And I think they help to achieve some of the things that we've all collectively desired to see, which is greater independence, some better definition around funding. As you know, I believe that some of that really needed to be enshrined in the charter so that it's not flexible to this body to change in the future, but that wasn't the case, and I do appreciate that you're still moving forward with the set of changes, the feedback of the Council President, and look forward to seeing this back at the Council.
All right, thank you, Council President Pro Tem Lee. Not seeing anybody else in the lights. We have a motion by myself on Ordinance A and a second by Councilmember Hilo Rivera. I think we can take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. I will now make a second motion to move the staff recommendation on sub-item B. And we have a second by Councilmember Hilo Rivera. Not seeing anybody else on the lights. All in favor of moving the staff recommendation on sub-item B, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you again, both, for this very, very good work. All right, with that, let's move quickly to the next item. Sarah, please introduce item 4.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 4 is exposing dark money, banning shadow campaigns, and ending perpetual fundraising. And if you're watching on City TV or the live stream online, you'd like to dial in to speak, please call 1-669-254-5252, inputting webinar ID 160-439-9420#. Chair.
All right, I see that you're settled in. I think District 9 is bringing this forward, so I don't want to kick this off.
Thank you, Council President. I'll make some brief introductory comments and then hand it over to Rosa for her presentation. People do not trust that their government is working on their behalf. There is a general level of disgust with the influence of money in politics, and Americans, Californians, and San Diegans aren't wrong to feel that. When money moves through our elections and the public can't see where it came from, people are left to assume the worst. Back in June, this committee voted unanimously to begin doing something about that. That vote wasn't the end of the work, it was just the beginning. This item is phase 2. It applies specifically to campaign finance, and it's meant to close the loopholes that still let big money shape our elections from the dark. And with that, I will hand it over to Rosa for her presentation.
Good morning, Chair LaCava and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Rosa Esquaga, Deputy Chief of Staff, and I will need 8 minutes. On behalf of Councilmember Hilo Rivera, I'm here to present on the second part of the comprehensive campaign finance and ethics reform package for the City of San Diego, focused on exposing dark money, banning shadow campaigns, and ending perpetual ongoing fundraising. Before I walk through the specifics, I want to ground us in why we brought this action to rules. Our vision is simple: a San Diego that works for all San Diegans, not just the wealthy and powerful. And the goal of this ordinance is to rebuild trust by bringing real transparency to the money being spent to influence elections, disclose spending that promotes future candidates, and align fundraising timelines for all candidates. What we're seeing in San Diego and in campaigns is outside groups can spend unlimited money promoting a future candidate before that person ever files a candidate intention statement, and none of that spending prior to that form being filed has to be disclosed. That creates what we call a shadow campaign. Voters see extensive candidate style promotion with no timely information about who paid for it, who funded it, and how much was spent. A candidate's wealthy allies can build their name recognition for them long before any disclosure obligation kicks in. Existing disclosure requirements have not kept pace with modern campaign strategies. Leaving key gaps that undercut true transparency. And campaign face different fundraising time periods depending on whether they're running on an even or odd number district. There's no coordinated timeline that aligns those fundraising periods with candidacy filing deadlines, which leaves an uneven playing field. These loopholes are being used right now in San Diego and Rio elections. Here's an example of a shadow campaign mailer that was sent to residents and voters here. Voters have received a mail from a political action committee or nonprofit featuring a full-page photograph of an individual, a personal signature, a first-person statement of the individual's qualification for public office, along with QR codes collecting residents' contact information and policy preferences. The mailer carried no financial campaign finance disclosures because the individual featured at the time had not filed a candidate intention statement. The same gap exists once politicians are also elected. Well-funded interest groups can spend heavily on advertising that praises or attacks a city elected official to thank them for a vote, promote their record, or criticize their position with no obligation to disclose who, including San Diego. When it paid for by line that names a vaguely named organization and reveals nothing about who actually funded it. This ordinance proposes 3 targeted campaign finance reforms: shadow campaign and pre-candidacy disclosure, true source and top funder campaign financial disclosure, and aligning campaign finance and fundraising timelines. Establish shadow campaign disclosures. This reform establishes a look-back period tied to the campaign cycle for the office being sought. Spending on candidate-style promotion during the window no longer sits outside disclosure just because the Form 501 hasn't been filed yet. A paid communication is covered if it clearly identifies and promotes and features, otherwise references someone who is later filing a candidate intention statement, and if that person as a prospective candidate. Once the individual files tied to those communications during the applicable look-back period. The same disclosure triggers applies to city elected officials. Paid communication that identifies a sitting official and references their performance in office, a position they've taken, or a municipal decision will also trigger disclosure, closing the gap that currently lets outside groups praise or attack officials anonymously, whether that spending happens before someone declares candidacy or after they're in office. City campaign systems already require disclosure for contributions and expenditures, including if images are being altered or used and sent to San Diegans. And lastly, proposed changes will require cost. These changes mean the public is left with a real picture of the influence behind the campaign that's influencing them. Any public communication will have to carry disclosure identifying the top 5 funders by name and dollar amount. Whose money is being behind the message before they decide how to respond to it. Los Angeles already requires a copy of all the Ethics Commission, creating a searchable public archive to influence campaign materials. We're proposing the same for San Diego to be filed with the city clerk. Then at the beginning of the year before an election and stay open well after. Right now, the city timeline also isn't equal, depending on whether a candidate is running in a March or June primary. To raise and spend funds is different. This proposal aligns those windows so every candidate has the same length of time to raise and periods for the applicable primary. That's consistent. Consistency is what creates a structured campaign timeline, rather than the current patchwork of a different start dates for different races. The proposal here is straightforward. Shorten the season, perpetual fundraising, keep the focus on governing, and make sure campaigns are won by public support, not by who started dialing for dollars. The request action for the item is as follows. Request that the Council District 9 office work with the City Attorney's Office to draft an ordinance and amend San Diego's municipal code to update outdated campaign finance related to shadow campaigns, pre-candidacy disclosures, and true source and top funder campaign finance disclosures, and align campaign finance and fundraising timelines. Thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for your work, and thank you for the presentation this morning.
Public testimony. Each speaker will have 1 minute. We've received 4 slips here in the committee room. We will begin testimony with Joyce and Yada. You will be followed by allegedly Audra, Amanda, and Manny Rodriguez.
I am in opposition of this. Committee member Hilo Rivera, I admire your work for the people. Yet on this item, I'll say this from my heart, and I'll start with a quote. End of quote. This is part of an Abraham first inaugural address, 1861. I hope I have 2 minutes. Here's my glitch. Here's what I'm against. Division. Feel into the vision. Don't just use your mind, but go into your better angel's place for all of San Diego. Councilmember Hilo Rivera, you say this. Said it?
Thank you. That does conclude your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is allegedly Audra.
You guys are funny. Because the whole system is fraudulent. And it's about racketeering and mismanaging people's money, coming back to us for more. And this is how you wield your power if you don't like what someone's doing. But I mean, it's going to continue. And what happens if somebody doesn't disclose this? Do you make a report and then they investigate the person? I mean, how is that going to be enforced? You know what I mean? It's like, it happens right now. I mean, all the time. I mean, so that's why, there's nobody to stop the fraud because you guys are all engaged in it. And that's why you pick the people that you do in whatever commission or committee or board so that the racket can continue. It's organized crime. So it's just, it's funny to sit and witness it and see how you guys are like, we hate these billionaires and you only, hate some, but it's like you're in bed with others. It's just funny.
Thank you. Amanda?
Good morning, Amanda, District 7. On the surface, looks good. I like it. Look forward to reading the actual ordinance. Great presentation. Would love to see Richard Bailey getting called out. He's a total lying greaseball scumbag. I looked on the OCPF, it excluded flyers and door hangers. I would include that. I think that we can fit that information. If it can fit on a mailer, it can fit on flyers and door hangers. And to kind of echo Audra, presentation didn't mention what consequences will be for violating. Hopefully ordinance will have some actual teeth in it, so we're not just doing performative politics up here as usual. Thanks.
Thank you. And our final speaker here in the committee room is Manny Rodriguez.
Good morning, council members. My name is Manny. Y'all know me. I'm here in my personal capacity, but I do manage a political action committee and I'm working to create new ones. And I do want to chime in and just say that I support these initiatives to bring more transparency in spending and how folks like myself get money and move money around. I do have some questions before I urge you all to vote yes on this. I do have a question on the timeline for disclosing the top 5 sponsors or funders. I think it's a great idea. But the top 5 can look different if you're looking at it historically versus who's been funding it in the past year or two. So I would ask you all to think about what you want to look. historically in the history of that committee or in the past year or two. Also for the public comms, like what would that include? Like if my committee makes an Instagram post announcing that we have a general meeting, do I have to disclose the top 5 funders on that Instagram post? You know, what is the threshold for what counts as a public communications post? That Instagram post, yeah, it was public, but it was meant to our members, right? So just kind of think about some more of the nuances, and yeah, I have some more thoughts, but please vote yes.
Thank you. This concludes testimony here in the committee room. So I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those in the virtual queue to indicate if they wish to provide comment on item number 4. Each speaker will have 1 minute. We currently have 2 hands raised, and we will begin with Blair Beekman. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. I previously meant to use the word foster instead of foister in talking about what was just the Ethics Commission, and I thought it was all of the commissions. Sorry about that. For this item, to try my best on, I think this is one of these items that it is joyful to be a part of the public process, hopefully. It is a good step-by-step process this can be doing to address our future, to be more accountable, to practice good governance. It's really nice to hear this. Thank you. These are the sort of items, it's a step-by-step process to eventually address Citizens United. I hope this item can address PACs overall. There'll be ongoing PAC issues that I think are uncomfortable, that our politicians can make choices to avoid large anonymous PACs that do things that can really hurt a campaign on a person, and work towards specific PACs. And I hope we can talk more about that in the future as well. Thanks a lot for this item.
Thank you for your testimony. Victoria Labruzzo, please unmute and begin. You will have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm just going to comment on the presentation. I understand why the Bailey mailer was used as an example, but it was distributed because it was distributed before he formally became a candidate. But Mr. Bailey is now an active candidate for city council, and I really question whether an official city presentation should identify a current candidate's political material as an example of conduct that you're trying to curb. The same point could have been made without identifying the information, and it could have been redacted. I just wanted to express my disappointment in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Judy Strang. Please unmute and begin.
Good morning. When I read through the material last night in preparation today, wasn't actually planning to speak to it because I understood what Sean Elo Rivera probably wanted to get to. It's not going to happen. I think it was a worthy effort, and I think the motives behind it are good. But there are so many ways to get around campaigning before they've actually declared the candidacy. I do appreciate that of the 3 areas you are concerned about, the ending of perpetual fundraising, I think, is applauded by all of us, because we feel sometimes that city council people, when they're talking about their intentions, are a year before they're going to rerun for their position, or just letting us know would we be lucky to have them again. And I realize that's about Shannon's money, and you're trying to get that money. It's a worthy effort. I don't think you're going to get to it. It doesn't handle social media.
Thank you for your testimony. And Chair, with no other hands in the queue, this concludes comment on item 4.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And with that, we'll go back to Councilmember Elo Rivera.
All right. Thank you, Council President. Let me start by thanking Rosa for her work on this. Rosa, I don't know if there's any question that was raised by the public. Maybe enforcement might be one good thing to speak about before I dive into my comments.
Yeah, for enforcement, we're working with the Ethics Commission to see if we can incorporate these, and also the clerk with the campaign requirements that folks get, and like the manuals that they received. It's honestly putting in the rules and then hopefully enforcing it through creating existing mechanisms that we have in the city.
Thank you, Rosa. And thanks again for the work on this. I also want to thank the clerk and Ethics Commission for being so good about responding to questions we've had, not just on this particular proposal, but the entire package of campaign finance and ethics reforms that we were working on. every one of the gaps that was outlined in the presentation benefits the same people, those with the most money and the most sophistication to work. It leaves everyday San Diegans, the people we're actually supposed to be accountable to, without the information they need to know who's really behind the campaigns and communications in front of them. I believe people should be able to trust that their local elections are decided by public support, not by whoever can spend the most while staying the most hidden. This item closes 3 gaps. First, it brings pre-candidacy shadow campaign spending into light and covers the flip side, where well-financed interests can reward office holders who vote their way by promoting them and punish those who stand up to them by tearing them down using unlimited money from sources the public never sees. Under our rules today, it's not that neither of those things are lobbying or campaigning. It's a blind spot in our rules and it's being exploited. Second, it would require disclosure of the true source of campaign money, not just the last organization that passed it along. And third, it ends the reality that there's practically no stretch of time here in San Diego when elected officials aren't raising money. That's time that could and should be going to working on housing, public safety, the daily work of running the city. And the concerns that are being raised here aren't theoretical. As we saw in the presentation, San Diegans have already received mail featuring a person's photograph, their signature, a first-person case for why they're qualified for public office, with no campaign finance disclosure of any kind. For all we know, Elon Musk could have spent $10 million supporting a candidate before they declared for their candidacy, and we will never know where that money came from or how much was spent. That is a blatant skirting of the spirit of our rules, and this effort would close that loophole. We believe that these are straightforward and common sense reforms. It doesn't tell anyone what they can or can't say. It just makes sure that when money is talking in our elections, San Diegans know where that money is coming from. And I am proud to be putting this forward and would ask for your support in continuing this. With that, Council President, I will move approval of the proposal.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Elo Rivera to move the recommendation. I'm not seeing anybody in the light, so I'll make a couple of comments here. I've always admired the district, and I've never been afraid of big ideas. I think the cause is certainly very noble, but I think there's a lot of nuance that people are going to need to puzzle out. To some of the comments by the public, money is the only measure that we use to assess disclosure, and so that's what we measure, and that's why disclosure of who is contributing, when they're contributing, can be a very important element. And despite some of the comments on the prior item and this item, I think the Ethics Commission actually has a pretty good track record of doing its work, enforcing the rules that are on the books. And if you flip through the media over the years, you'll see people that have been caught and have been punished through fines. And there's been a lot of talk, those fines were not substantial enough to actually discourage that kind of behavior, and maybe that's a conversation for another day. But there's also, I think, a lot of nuance between something as silly as I print a mailer today and I disclose the top 5. How often do I have to reprint that mailer because the top 5 change? You know, those kind of nuances is what drives everybody crazy in trying to figure that out. I have a lot of confidence that you and your team can actually puzzle that out, and that you will take a lot of input about how to do that. I think there's also what was not raised or maybe implied in some of the public comment is when does it cross that line, especially for somebody who is currently in office and is trying to advance issues as part of their daily work, that some say, no, you're not doing that as part of your work. You're doing that because you're running for re-election or another office. And how do we distinguish that? So I think the nuances in getting that right so that the integrity of what you're trying to do is actually maintained and not undercut because of a thousand little cuts in there. So to that point, I would be willing to do this if this ordinance, a draft ordinance, was brought back to committee, because I think these things we can puzzle out here at the committee level that can be difficult to puzzle out at the full council. So if you would agree that was your draft, okay. So with that, and your good work in trying to puzzle out all those nuances, I will support the motion.
Thank you, President. May I ask just a couple of quick things to fill in some details? Two of the rules that are critical to what's being put forward here, the top 5 disclosure as an example, we're modeling that off of rules from other jurisdictions that have these rules on the books now, and so we'll be looking to them so it's not totally novel.
Yeah.
The top 5 piece in particular, and similar, absolutely, those are really, really important details. I also want to clarify the nuance that you were speaking to about current office holders talking about their work. It's one thing for us to talk about our work. I think what we're trying to aim at is outside sources talking about, not just talking about, but spending on whether or not we are doing what they want or not, and how that money is spent. And there, obviously, the thresholds there are important as well. Absolutely, the details are very, very important here. We want this to be enforceable. I think the general sentiment, and it's baked into the response to, even as you're putting forward proposals, there's like the simultaneous, yes, the rules need to be stricter, and we don't trust the system to enforce them, which makes it even more important for the details to be hammered out. So again, absolutely happy to bring it back here to rules. I do think that it's important that this moves quickly, because the longer this is we are watching behavior modify on the fly, and some very, very wealthy interests figure out some very creative ways to exploit the loopholes that currently exist. And again, that is playing itself out in real time here in San Diego. And so we want to act methodically and be very thoughtful about what we craft, and we don't want to leave the current rules on the books any longer than they need to be there, because they're being exploited as we speak.
All right, thank you for that. Council President Pro Tem Lee.
Thank you, Council President, and I'll support the motion with the adjustment that you presented, Council President. I actually really appreciate that, because I was struggling to find the words as well, because I do think there are the nuances here that are going to be critical, and we heard even just some questions from the public. I do think these are issues that are important to address. We saw some of this in play, as Councilmember Rivera pointed out, in this last cycle, and so that is important. But I don't want to just think that we're going to model after some jurisdiction out there and that is sufficient for what's in place in San Diego, because for us, how we align with what the FPPC puts forward, I think is important. And then how that connects to enforcement, especially through ethics, also, all of that connects somewhere. And so getting that hammered out, I think, would be helpful, and look forward to seeing what comes back.
All right, thank you for that. Councilmember Campillo.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Councilmember Rivera. Happy to support moving forward at this point to get more details fleshed out. I was curious, just real quick, Councilmember Rivera, slide 5 showed the shadow campaigning for, or titled Shadow Campaigning for Office Holders. It had 2 examples of state level and federal level. Would the rules you're proposing apply to people, rather so-called shadow campaign for people who file a 501 to run for city office, or for any office that was required under FPPC rules in California?
I think we'd only have jurisdiction over those here in the city.
Got it.
Those are kind of live examples that we wanted to give people something tangible to see in terms of what we're referencing. But I don't think we could require someone who's running for statewide or federal office. That being said, there's, I think, two ends of the disclosure there. There's a disclosure by those who are spending, and then the disclosure by the person who's seeking office. And so that first component of the shadow campaigning piece, the city council candidate who's had a de facto campaign run for them prior to filing, they have to disclose upon their filing to run for office about the running for office here in San Diego about the expenditures that were made on their behalf.
That begs the question. In this particular slide 4, on commongoodsd.com, it's clear that the then not candidate and future candidate has a signature on it, and it seems to be coming from him as a letter, right? It was completely a pro potential candidate X who hasn't filed. That seems to be an independent expenditure, and so we'd have to get to the details of that candidate filing a 501 and not coordinating with an outside group. How are they supposed to disclose when they're supposed to have an independent expenditure firewall? So that would be first thing, and that would be easily manipulable because they would simply just change the format of their advertising so that it is independent, and so nothing gets necessarily stopped there. On the IE side or outside PAC group side, then they still have to disclose today what they're spending on in regular filings on their semi-annual reports. So I'm not sure what would be necessarily different by passing the rule as currently conceptualized. I see what we're trying to aim for, but the disclosure rules at the moment certainly say that. Is it your vision that when a candidate files a file of a 1, if an outside PAC has spent any money that includes a photo or a positive message or a website that makes a person look good before they become a candidate, they'd have to disclose that they spent money trying to make that person look good?
Yeah, I think the idea here is that we don't allow for the circumvention of those coordination rules. Mm-hmm. Because as we just saw there was a campaign run to promote the candidate, and we don't know what was spent on that or what the source of that money is.
Can I ask you this? Was the reason we don't know that is because it doesn't use electioneering? It's technically not an electioneering communication that doesn't say vote for, support, draft, this, that, and the other, or oppose, stop, vote no on.
I think it's a combination of things. If that plus this was not a declared candidate.
Yeah.
So that, because it was not a declared candidate, the rules look different. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to close, where we are incentivizing someone to not file that they're running for office because of the coordination that can occur prior to that, the promotion that can be done without any of the rules that we currently have in place. So essentially moving that shadow campaign into the light, because I don't think this is the last time we will see this game played.
Sure, I hear you. I wonder if the city attorney really needs to analyze at what point state law around what qualifies as electioneering communications applies to something that is fundamentally a marketing campaign that ultimately rolls into a electoral campaign. But I think that would be a really important thing to understand so that the applicability of a potential rule is obvious for everyone to understand. The second thing I wanted to ask really quickly about is the fundraising timeline period. I know that right now we have rules that say city council, at least certainly elected officials, cannot raise money for anything 180 days after their election and until January 1st of the year before their potential reelect. So it seems like there's still about 18 months where city council candidates, the mayor for reelection, city attorney for reelection, can't raise money and are prohibited from actually doing so. Is the purpose of the fundraising time period update simply to make sure it's 365 days before a primary election is held? Or because it says in the first bullet point on slide 11 says there's practically no period of time when San Diego's elected officials and candidates are not raising money. You and I and the council president, basically from May or June of 2021, could not raise any money for a potential reelection until January 1st of 2023. So there's definitely guardrails there. Just wondering what the key point is here.
Yeah, so good question. The first piece on the window, so yes, for an individual, right? I think what we're talking about kind of is globally, that cycle is constantly running within the city. So when you put together the odd districts and the even districts, at that point, it's perpetually rolling.
I see.
But the alignment piece on the 365 days, as envisioned, this was a flag from the clerk that there's this unevenness between cycles, and there would be some benefits from her perspective in having it be a clear line that starts exactly 1 year prior to the primary. We also think that would be useful, as those of us on this dais know and others know, one of the ways that folks are deemed viable for office in the future is based on previous fundraising results. And if you happen to be in a cycle where there was a smaller window rather than a longer window, you could be presumed to be a less viable candidate because of no fault of your own. You had 3 months less to raise that first batch of money. So again, there's the kind of global perpetual cycle that we're looking to have some end to, and then evening out the playing field for those who are running in different cycles.
Understood. 2 quick questions. One for the city attorney, or wasn't it previously the rule that a candidate for council could only raise a year before their election day? I feel like that rule was before 2016, 2017, and then was adjusted to January 1st of the prior year before the election in like 2018.
I don't know that offhand. I have to look into it.
Okay. Looking at historical records, I'm sure we could identify that very, very quickly. I think you said something interesting, Councilmember Vila Rivera. You said that the political pragmatism of having it 1 year before. You mentioned cycle lengths. Doesn't it seem to suggest that having it start on January 1st, so every candidate has exactly 6 months to raise before their first period, gives everybody the equal time, as opposed to some candidates getting March through June 31st and some getting June 5th through June 31st to raise money? I don't know. You brought up the sort of viability question, and I was wondering why we would, I don't know that we should be discussing political pragmatism in how we craft laws, but it seems to me that giving everyone 6 months for their first reporting period would be the fairer thing. But that's not necessarily a question, but I'm confused why that was brought up. I hear you. I think we should look and see why that was changed. I feel very positive it was changed in 2016, 2017, 2018, and just get a historical understanding. Definitely see the virtue of saying 365 days before an election. Everybody knows what it is, but everyone also knows when January 1st is. So I'll be in support today and look forward to the revisions in the city attorney's opinion and further public input. Thank you, council member.
All right, thank you for that. Good conversation. Not seeing anybody else in the lights. We have a motion by Councilmember Vila Rivera and a second by myself to move the recommendation and bring it back to committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. Now let's go to what some would argue, certainly from a public point of view, is actually the big item on the Rules Committee, although I think the first two that we discussed are incredibly important for the city's business. So with that, Sarah, please introduce our final discussion item.
Thank you, Chair LaCava. Item number 3 is ordinance to preserve free parking at city-owned parking lots that provide access to city beaches in Mission Bay. And if you're watching on City TV or the live stream and you'd like to call in to speak, please dial 1-669-2545-252, inputting webinar ID 160-439-9420, Chair.
All right, thank you, Sarah. With that, I see the presenters are settled in, so please introduce yourselves for the record and let us know how much time you need.
Good morning, Council President and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Vic Patil, and I serve as Deputy Chief of Staff for Councilmember Campillo.
And my name is Abby Reuter, and I serve as Senior Policy Advisor to Council President Joe LaCava, and we will need 5 minutes for our presentation.
When you're ready.
Today, the offices of Council President Joe LaCava and Councilman Raul Campillo are bringing together an ordinance to preserve free parking at beaches in Mission Bay. We are requesting recommendation that the Rules Committee approve and forward to City Council for adoption an ordinance amending the San Diego Municipal Code by adding Chapter 8, Article 6, Section 54 to prohibit the city from imposing parking fees in city-owned parking lots that provide access to city beaches in Mission Bay for a period of 10 years following the ordinance's effective date.
For a bit of background, the City of San Diego beaches in Mission Bay provide significant recreational, environmental, and economic benefits to residents and visitors. Access to the beach areas as defined in the municipal code is any beach or land with waters immediately abutting or adjacent. And all of this is under the jurisdiction and control of the Parks and Recreation Department. These beach areas have long supported the City of San Diego's commitment to quality of life for all San Diegans. City-owned parking lots play a key role in providing convenient and equitable public access to beaches and Mission Bay. It is also key to note that the city currently does not charge for parking in the beach and Mission Bay parking lots that it owns and operates. These free lots help keep the coastline accessible regardless of income. In addition, the ordinance contains a sunset date of December 31st, 2036, which aligns with the 10-year period with feedback that was provided at committee in March when this item was originally presented as a ballot measure, as well as recent activities in the beach areas. We've added protections into this ordinance that would not prevent the city from continuing to regulate special events and commercial activities.
To close and to restate, we are requesting a recommendation that the Rules Committee approve and forward to City Council for adoption an ordinance amending the San Diego Municipal Code by adding Chapter 8, Article 6, Section 54 to prohibit the city from imposing parking fees in city-owned parking lots that provide access to city beaches in Mission Bay for a period of 10 years following the ordinance's effective date.
And with that, we are available for any questions.
All right, thank you both for the presentation and the work that it took to bring this item forward. I believe the Office of the IBA has comments.
Thank you so much. Jillian Andolina with the Office of the IBA. We certainly understand the sentiment and rationale of the proposal to prohibit charging for parking in city-owned parking lots at city beaches in Mission Bay for 10 years. I'll note that our office typically encourages council to preserve financial flexibility as much as possible to respond to changing fiscal environments and priorities. While the council could choose to reverse this prohibition during the 10-year period, this proposal creates a significant burden, which we recognize as part of the intent. If the council does become interested in pursuing this paid parking revenue source in the next decade, it could result in significant new resources to the city, potentially exceeding $10 million annually and possibly more, depending on how parking fees and other regulations are structured. Of course, actual revenue would depend on a number of factors that could impact or reduce this magnitude, such as requirements from the Coastal Commission or the State Lands Commission, as well as any specific policy ultimately adopted by council and future legal vetting. We simply want to offer this broader context as the committee discusses this proposal today.
How many happy, wonderful stories happen at these beaches? I can't to tell. You can't. Excuse me, new statement. Tag on these experiences. Please vote yes. Love to all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is allegedly Audra.
Not really sure why you're only doing it for 10 years. Seems like if you guys wanted to have this be have people have access, and with the state of the city and people just trying to get by, I feel like it would. I mean, why not? Why does it have an end date? Why can't you just put the ordinance in and have it just be like an indefinite thing? And then if at one point, which I'm sure is going to happen, then you guys can go and fix it and then get your $10 million. Because I'm actually surprised you're kind of throwing away $100 million. But I'm glad, because you guys can't be trusted with our money. But that's a lot of money sitting on the table. So I feel like at some point, someone's going to come looking for it from the people. And that's what's crazy. $10 million from the people a year just to park. Like that is a lot of money. But Good for you guys, racketeering 101.
Thank you, Amanda. And Amanda, you will be followed by Manny Rodriguez, Zach DeFazio, and Tom Darby.
Hi, Amanda, District 7. Actually, this is what brought me here to the meeting today. I heard about this last night at the Community Planners Committee. It's my understanding this was added so last minute we didn't even have the ordinance to look at the meeting. Everyone seemed to agree. We were kind of confused. We were like, what is this? Why is this? Everyone seemed to agree it was just obviously like performative, just like Raul getting the Mission Bay bathrooms reopened. I think you guys are trying, like Audra said, I think you guys are trying to groom us, so you don't have backlash like you did at Balboa Park to start charging us in 10 years. It's ridiculous that there's 10 years limit on this. I think we all kind of see what's happening. Since I have a couple more seconds, at the meeting last night, the chair said that apparently Raul's office said they were initially going to put it on the ballot, but decided to put it through the Rules Committee instead. Wild that you were going to spend taxpayer money to support your performative politics. It's honestly rude that you guys wasted 30 minutes of our time last night and wasted all our time here today.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Manny Rodriguez.
Hello, Raul for legislating. I love to see council members taking up an issue, proposing ordinances on council, and you've been, quite frankly, killing it on the social media game. I'm going to give you props on all that. With all that being said, I urge the committee to vote no on this measure. As the IBA mentioned, it's really important for the city to have financial flexibility to meet the needs that residents want. You know, what's the stormwater backlog at? A few billion. The streets, a few hundred million short per year. Street lights, feel like half of them are out in the city. And here we are saying, oh, we're not going to charge people to park their storage containers on wheels for free on the beach. You know, let's take a different perspective on that. And you know, Council President Joe, you looked at me in the eyes at the La Jolla Planning Board and told me that you were going to let the city deteriorate. You know, I asked you, the city just going to deteriorate, and you said yes, it will continue to deteriorate if we don't get new revenue sources. Here's a revenue source in front of you, and you're choosing to put it off the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach.
All right. Good morning. My name is Zach DeFazio Farrell. I strongly urge all of you to vote no on item 3. We just went through lengthy and difficult budget negotiations in which programs like arts and culture were nearly gutted. Yet now the city is being asked to tie its own hands for 10 years to guarantee free parking. I grew up in Pacific Beach, so I understand the importance of coastal access, but we should not conflate access to the beach with free storage of private automobiles on public land. Coastal access means being able to physically reach and enjoy our beautiful coastline without barriers preventing the public from doing so. Free parking in municipally owned lots is something else entirely. It is a public subsidy for storing private vehicles. Curiously, nobody is proposing free MTS rides for beachgoers. Nobody's requiring Uber or Lyft to provide free beach trips, and nobody's requiring the many businesses renting bicycles to beachgoers to provide those bikes for free. So why should taxpayers like myself, who visit the beach only a handful of times a year, subsidize tourists and people who park at the beach every weekend? When we can barely fund broadly beneficial programs like the arts, tying the city's hands until 2036 to protect free parking.
This does
is
conclude
simply
your time.
absurd. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Tom Darby.
My name is Tom Darby. I live in Linda Vista in Councilman Campillo's district. I'm here to express my strong support for the proposal to keep parking free at our beaches in Mission Bay. I'm also here to express my disappointment at the poor judgment and questionable management that led to the cities being in a situation where charging for the beaches, parking at the beaches in Mission Bay is even conceivable. For generations, free parking has helped ensure that residents from all parts of our city and all backgrounds and ways of life can access our coast by car. My opinion is that this proposal's preserving the city's longstanding policy for at least the next 10 years does not go far enough. My preference would be free parking in perpetuity. However, for the time being, this proposal is adequate. I urge, therefore, the committee to advance the proposal to the full City Council.
Thank you for your testimony. This concludes comment here in the committee room, so I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those in the virtual queue to indicate if they wish to provide comment on item number 3. We currently have 14 hands raised in the queue, and we will begin testimony with Chris Roberts. Please unmute and begin.
Hello, I'm Chris Roberts from San Diego 350. I oppose this free beach parking ordinance. Free parking is not free. Driving is very expensive in California, and free parking at desirable locations like the beach leads to high VMT as cars search endlessly for parking spots. Access to public beaches in San Diego is an important issue, especially in underserved communities where many folks don't own cars and lack convenient access to public transit to the beach. Ideally, the city should work to improve public transit routes to the beach, and also should establish free shuttles that lead from free parking lots that are located some distance from the beach. And then paid parking at beach lots could be instituted, and the parking revenue could fund the shuttle service. Rather than passing this ordinance, why not just keep parking free? There is zero political will to start charging for parking at the beach today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Catherine Douglas. Please unmute and begin.
Free parking ensures that all San Diego residents have equal access to their parks and beaches. Folks not only come for recreational activities, but they also come from relief from the higher temperatures inland, which is critical. Importantly, this proposal strikes the right balance, allowing the city to enforce parking regulations, operate and manage these lots, and regulate commercial activities while still providing free public access to these important recreational spaces. Clearly, this council learned its lesson from the Balboa Park debacle and the resulting unintended consequences. Let's get this one right. Thank you, Council Member Campillo, and thank you, Council President Joe LaCava, for bringing this forward to preserve free parking at San Diego beaches and Mission Bay.
Thank you. Pacific Beach Planning Group, please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon, or I guess it's still the morning, Chair and members of the Council. My name is Marcella Bothwell, Chair of the PD Planning Group. I strongly support the ordinance preserving free parking on city-owned property that provides access to our beaches in Mission Bay. Mission Bay is a regional park serving residents from every neighborhood in San Diego. Free parking is essential so families, workers, seniors, and visitors citywide can continue to enjoy these coastal resources. The measure is carefully limited. It applies only to designated city-owned lots, excludes leased properties, and leaves existing meters and fines unchanged. Please approve this ordinance to protect equitable coastal access for all San Diegans. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Edwall, please unmute and begin.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my strong support for this, to preserve free parking at the beaches in Mission Bay. Families like mine have found pleasure, enjoyment, mental health, physical health. We have found all of those things at the beaches and bays throughout our lives. I didn't have money when my kids were growing up. I would never have been able to afford to pay for parking. It's a place, families, what will happen if you do this? People with money will park in these lots. People towing 3 and 4 kids who don't have the money will be searching in the neighborhoods for places to park and have to walk who knows how far to get there. Lack of money creates huge barriers when you put things like this in place. Please protect free parking. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Victoria Labruzzo, please unmute and begin.
Hi, Victoria Labruzzo. I am speaking on behalf of the Community Planners Committee as the chair. And yes, we did have a meeting last night. And yes, we did discuss this ordinance for 30 minutes. We did go in depth, unlike what your other commentators said. We did pull up the ordinance. One of the members pulled it out and read through it. We also looked at Pacific Beach's comments and we agreed. So we did take a vote and we voted 22 in favor of supporting it with 2 opposed. The 2 opposed is North Park and Downtown. Saying basically overall, considering, oh, and also I did send this in to all of you. It was a late submitted comment because I got the letter written at 10 o'clock last night to submit for today's meeting. But overall, San Diego's coastline belongs to the entire city. Public access, that shouldn't depend on whether you happen to live at the beach. We need to maintain the free parking, and we appreciate this ordinance and support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Saad Assad, please unmute and begin.
Hello, council members. My name is Saad, an advocate for housing and livable cities. I strongly oppose this ordinance. I too also want more access to the beach. This ordinance does not achieve that. Everyone here is talking about access. We know that if you drive to the beach at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, you won't be able to find a spot and you'll have to drive further away. We're talking about like the tax, the fee that this would impose. There's also a time tax that you impose on people if you don't create options that discourage people who live nearby from taking up a parking spot. The fair and peer study that y'all conducted showed that many of the beachgoers who are using that parking live nearby. It'd be better if we have access to shuttles, transit options, so those nearby could use that, while those traveling from further areas like San Ysidro, Rancho Bernardo could find parking when they get there. Access does not mean free. Often it means congestion. We should be providing options so people can park in places, and we should also consider the option of allowing, following the data to ensure that we have options.
Thank you for your testimony. The 5-minute timer has concluded with 13 hands up in the virtual queue. We will take no other callers beyond these 13 hands raised. L. Hansen, please unmute and begin.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Hansen. I live in Allied Gardens where it's going to be 93 degrees today. My partner and I yesterday went to the beach and parked for free in a lot, and we deeply value this access to all for beaches. I'm shocked by the opposition. A beach is not a privilege reserved for people who can afford it. I know that we have concerns with people abusing the beach systems, but as this is written, it's protecting people or the city from also regulating how it needs to while still providing free access. This is so valuable to people. I have lived here for 20 years. Many lived here their whole lives. Taking this away hurts families, it hurts people that don't have access to things that cost money. This is a free place for people to gather, and the shoreline should not turn people away. It's access for all, and I strongly support this.
Thank you for your testimony. Carmen Moley, please unmute and begin.
Hi, I'm from Mission Valley, and I don't know if anybody who's against this measure has ever tried to take a lot of kids with the stuff that you have to schlep, or brought their elderly parents to the beach to enjoy watching their grandchildren. Automobiles, they provide the space it needs, and a shuttle isn't really going to do it when you have so many kids and one person. I mean, obviously we have limited resources. We're just going to have to learn how to spend our time, our money in different ways, because this beach is open access is one of the things that distinguishes us from our fair neighbor to the north, the Los Angeleses. And we're not, I think part of who we are as San Diegans are people who are so closely identified with the beach that to charge for it would limit those who could get there. It just would. Public access via shuttle isn't really the answer either. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Loomis, please unmute and begin.
Thank you, Kevin Loomis, District 7, Chair of the Mission Trails Regional Park CAC, as well as Vice Chair for the task force. I mention this because I very much understand budgets, revenue, and expenses. I fully support keeping parking free at city beaches. However, the city council and mayor consistently stated the urgency for more revenue, but your numbers do not pan out. Let me give you real numbers. 10 years ago, in 2016, the population for City of San Diego was 1.239 million. Today it's 1.42. That's 2%. That's all we've increased, but our budget exploded. We went from 3.3 billion to 6.1 billion, and 86% in the last 10 years. Gentlemen and gentlewomen, we do not have a revenue problem. We have a terrible spending problem. With citizens struggling to keep food on tables, paying their bills, and remaining in San Diego, the council needs to rethink budget serving the community better. I want to thank Councilmember Campillo and Councilmember LaCava for being on the forefront and the tip of this. Thank you again.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Blair Beekman. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, Blair Beekman. When I first lived in San Diego, I lived in the beach area a lot from 86 to 89. It was a really sacred time and sacred place for me. I don't want to hurt that with parking fees. But I've been a little bit remiss in this time around in how exactly we're supposed to work our budget issues. I really want to thank the mayor and his staff. They've rescinded a number of their budget ideas to allow our real selves to more continue at this time. Thank you for those efforts. I hope we can find answers to our budget issues. In the meantime, if these services can continue, it's great that we can. I hope we really can continue the Neil Good Day Center. I hope that can return. Overall, the ideas I offered about budget cuts for city workers, that actually, that's an item I'll talk about later. But thank you a lot for this item, or what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane Harris, please unmute and begin.
Hi, good morning, Council President LaCava, Councilmember Campillo, and members of the Rules Committee. I'm Shane Harris. I'm here on behalf of the Office of the Public Advocate, my office, San Diego Public Advocate, and I strongly support this ordinance protecting free parking at our beaches in Mission Bay, because this is bigger than parking. This is about access. Our coastline doesn't just belong to the people who can afford to live near it. It belongs to families in Encanto, City Heights, Linda Vista, and every neighborhood across San Diego. We talk a lot about equity at City Hall. Equity also means making sure working families can actually access public spaces with their tax dollars and their support. When San Diegans are already paying more for housing, groceries, utilities, and everything else, a family day at the beach should become another bill. I thank you, Councilmember Campillo and Council President LaCava, for bringing this logical, rational, and reasonable policy forward. Whether you live east of the 805, south of the 94, or overlooking the Pacific, the beach belongs to you. Keep the beach accessible and free. Keep the sand golden and the Pacific blue. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Judy Strang, please unmute and begin.
Good morning. I want to start as a lifetime San Diegan. I would say that the two speakers aren't wrong when they mentioned that by 11 o'clock on Saturday you're not going to find parking, and that there are quite a few motorhomes, etc., who are parking all day long at the beach. That said, I don't have air conditioning, and if I where I go, and I am blessedly happy that I can have that opportunity to go and not have to pay for parking. What I have noticed over the last couple of weeks with this heat wave is the number of families that are there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't know what their heating or cooling situation is, but usually you don't see that when school starts. So it is serving a real purpose for our family. And this heat wave seems to be part of our life in the next little while. What a gift it is that there is one place, no matter what, you can go, have fresh air, cool air, and some peace and enjoyment. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Freak, please unmute and begin.
Hi, Gail Freed, resident of District 3. I am opposed to this ordinance. I urge you to vote no. I don't know why we need to vote on this. If you're really concerned about access, then why don't we repeal the 30-foot height limit along the coast and allow more people to live along the coast? So I just don't think you need this ordinance, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Hector, please unmute and begin.
I'm a yes vote for this. This is like a no-brainer. And then there's other revenue sources that the city can get at the beach. And you guys are the Rules Committee. The mayor is promoting lawlessness at the beach. The drug cartels are down at the boardwalk, having their stands, not paying taxes, no permit, taking over the boardwalk with all those tables. And you guys are the Rules Committee. You got to get the cartels out of there. That's not just guys doing it. They're employees of the guys that own the stuff. And they're doing business illegally. They're selling food without the health permit from the county. They're just Todd is lawless. This is lawlessness again. You guys are just stealing stuff out of the stores. That's what it promotes. Fine them $1,000 a day. That'd be a revenue source from the guys out there. Take some action, which you guys, if you're the rules committee, enforce the rules. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We have 5 hands remaining, and we will continue testimony with Natalie Ratchke. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, Natalie here. I have 4 children, and the beach was their second home. We lived by the beach when we were homeless, and it was lovely. And it was frustrating now coming from not living close to the beach, trying to go to the beach, and that's something we can go and do for free. And then if we want to even see a parking space that is close, I can't. That's something I have to budget, and I don't put that in my budget. So sometimes I have to drop my kids off, drive back up, park, and then walk back, and that's kind of an uncomfortable situation too. Even though a couple of them are older, I don't feel comfortable just dropping my children off on the corner at any of the beaches, having to drive and then walk back, hoping that somebody hasn't done something or said something to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Walker, please unmute and begin. Peggy Walker, I have given you permission to speak.
Thank you very much. I am a longtime San Diegan, and I wholeheartedly support this ordinance. The beaches belong to everybody, and everybody should have access regardless of ability to pay. So please pass this ordinance. I think it's good for everyone, San Diegans and our visitors too. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Del Mastro, please unmute and begin.
Hi, my name's Al Del Mastro, and I'm very disappointed in this committee. I don't want to see any more taxes in San Diego. I still have been waiting to hear from 2004 where an attorney for the city was given a $100,000 raise, a 50% raise, and allowed to go on a 4-month vacation around the world, where they called that working from home. I want to know when you're going to start running in. How many people actually go to work every day for the city that are going in 5 days a week, or doing their job, or they're just overemployed? We want to know cutbacks on that. We don't want more taken from our citizens. The other thing is like all these bike lanes are being put in and taking away parking. I don't see, you guys are promoting it, but none of you guys are taking public transportation to work every day. Anybody that took public transportation today, please raise your hand, because this is, you taking advantage of San Diegans is awful.
Thank you for your comment. And the final hand raised in the queue is Paul Jamison. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, I'm Paul Jamison. I'm opposed to this ordinance. San Diego has an $8 billion infrastructure deficit due to decades of revenue and spending imbalances that extend far beyond the recent increase in spending. Considering how massive that is, why don't we take any revenue options off the table, especially for something that we all agree is extremely valuable, beachfront parking. I think it's extremely unfair that MTS will soon be charging $6 for a round trip to take the bus to the beach, while drivers pay nothing to park feet from the sand. These lots cost significant money to upkeep. It only makes sense that the users of them pay their fair share, particularly the many luxury vehicles that I see every time I go to Mission Beach. Instead, people who don't drive end up subsidizing those drivers. There's a public restroom on Mission Beach Boardwalk that's in desperate need of replacement. A modest parking fee from the vast parking lots there could pay to replace it in one beach season. Are we really going to hand an $8 billion infrastructure debt to future San Diegans because we refuse to even consider user fees for beach parking? Thank you.
Thank you. And to any hands that had gone up after the 5-minute timer had lapsed, you can submit your comment at councilcommittee@sandiego.gov. And Chair, this concludes public testimony on item number 3.
All right, thank you, Sarah. With that, we'll turn it over to committee members, and we'll start with Councilmember Campillo.
Thank you very much, Council President. Thank you to everyone who called in today.
and those who helped us get this item before us today. I especially want to thank you for your partnership, Council President, on this ordinance. The proposal is better because we worked together and listened to community members and were willing to rethink how we could accomplish a shared goal. Last week, when the Council President and I presented this item to the La Jolla Shores Association, I mentioned a book that I have every member of my staff read, Unreasonable Hospitality. And at its core, it's a book about service, about listening to people you serve and constantly asking how you can do better. And there's a lesson from that book that's always stuck with me about approaching problem solving. It's that sometimes the opposite of a good idea is not a bad idea. It's an even better idea. I think that exactly describes how we got here today, thanks to the Council President. Earlier this year, I proposed pursuing a ballot measure to protect free public access to our beach and Mission Bay parking lots. And after that proposal went to the Rules Committee in March, the Council President came forward and essentially said, here's another idea. Instead of permanently tying the city's hands forever, we could accomplish something that, with the same fundamental goal, in a way that preserves public access, gives the city flexibility it needs to manage parking responsibly and not spend $500,000 needed to get this on a ballot and the associated costs with running a campaign. That question led us to the ordinance today. So thank you, Council President. I think we landed in a great space. This ordinance supports a very clear principle that San Diego's coastline should remain accessible to everyone. And a day at the beach or Mission Bay shouldn't depend on whether a family can afford another fee simply to get there. When I spoke with the Mission Bay lessees, they shared another piece of data that really underscored why this matters. Many, many people who rely on Mission Bay for recreation come from communities south of the 8. For these families, Mission Bay is a place where they can spend the day together, enjoy the outdoors, experience not just one of San Diego's greatest public resources, but one of the world's greatest public spaces without having to dig deeper into their pockets. Our coastline is a public resource, and access to it should not depend on your zip code or your ability to pay. So we need to make sure that every San Diegan from every neighborhood can enjoy the beaches in Mission Bay without putting another price tag between them and the coast. Preserving that access does not mean we abandon responsible management. We've heard concerns about what happens when vehicles occupy these lots for days at a time, and when commercial operators use public parking for private business purposes, or when public spaces are being used in ways that were never intended to accommodate. We address those concerns directly. When we saw this summer Amazon delivery vehicles using these public resources, we made clear that these protections apply to recreational access, and the city retains the ability to regulate commercial uses and appropriately manage and permit special events, including events like the Beach and Bay Half Marathon. And I have to thank Deputy City Attorney Ken So for his good work in integrating that clause about the Amazon issue into the ordinance, and of course for all of his great work on this entire idea. The ordinance also preserves our ability to enforce existing laws and address vehicles that remain in these lots for extended periods. Protecting free parking does not mean tolerating behavior that prevents everyone else from enjoying these spaces. In fact, enforcement is part of ensuring these parking lots remain safe and clean, accessible, and available for intended public use. And importantly, we listen to the concerns that no council today should necessarily restrict the option available to city leaders a decade from now. That's why this ordinance includes the 10-year sunset, aligned with the California Coastal Commission's approved period, allowing the city to close certain lots overnight. So future leaders will have the opportunity to evaluate what worked, what didn't, what conditions exist at that time. And to me, that is the balance this ordinance strikes. First, preserve access and implement smarter management while sending a signal that the city knows that the residents of San Diego want their public spaces accessible. Second, protect the public without tying the hands of future councils. And third, address bad behavior without charging everyone for the actions of a few. San Diego's beaches and Mission Bay are amongst our greatest public assets, and they belong to the teenager who wants to surf before school, or the senior who comes down to take a walk along the water, the family that packs up their car for a day at the beach, and to every San Diegan who simply wants to watch the sunset on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, something people around the world dream of doing. Those experiences should not have another price tag associated with them. You shouldn't have to pull out your wallet simply for the privilege of accessing a public coastline that belongs to all of us. So thank you, Council President, for your collaboration. We've listened and adjusted according to what we've heard from public feedback, and that's why I'm proud to move staff's recommendation on this item today. And I want to thank Vic Fatil from my staff and Abby Reuter from the Council President's staff for your many hours of work and community engagement and coordination with the City Attorney's Office. Job very well done. Thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you, Council Member. So we have a motion by Council Member Campillo to move the staff recommendation. I'll start out by seconding the motion, get that out of the way. So I want to thank staff, Abby and Vic, and the hours they put in, and the tortured hours to actually figure out the name of all the parking lots that we have that are associated with beach access or bay access, which turned out to be a remarkable challenge going forward. But thank you for that extra work. Thank you to the IBA for your insights. It's always appreciated to get reminders of the implications or the budget implications of any action that we might take. And thank you, Councilmember Campillo, for having the original idea, but having the willingness to entertain how we might serve the city best in bringing such a proposal forward. That was a big ask to change it from a ballot measure, which, as you described, would be permanent, to an ordinance, which would have a different component to that. And it's no secret that we are in a tough budget situation. For those who actually watch everything that the council does, you will note that I supported the idea of paid parking at beaches and bays for non-residents. It's a key element of the budget memo that I put out in September 2025. And as we looked deeper into the mechanics of free for San Diegans and charging visitors and tourists, frankly, we ran into a brick wall. The Coastal Commission, to be clear, does support paid parking at points of coastal access. Some of our smaller coastal cities do charge for paid parking at the oceanfront. However, the Coastal Commission absolutely does not allow charging different classes of beachgoers different rates. For me, that was a deal killer, full stop. To be candid, the lessons learned over the past year associated with Balboa Park since I put out that initial memo also influenced me. Key elements were who actually uses Balboa Park, in turn, who uses Mission Bay and our beachfronts. And how does their frequency vary? And as some folks have relayed, living close to the coastal areas myself, and when I return home or travel during the weekends, I see people that catch the surf before they go to work. They're there for maybe an hour. But I also see people that I'm pretty sure did get there at 10 or 11 o'clock on the Saturday morning till 8 or 9 o'clock that night. It's also clear to me, as we learned at Balboa Park, for some, that is their park. It is not the regional asset. It is not that thing that they occasionally visit. These are places that is just part of their daily lives. And that puts an interesting twist on it as well. And while the city's budgetary challenges are real and significant, new revenue, if any, should be thoughtful and not on the backs of San Diegans. And as I've come to learn in my now 6th year in office, a revenue idea, a revenue proposal is not necessarily translating into revenue realized. And that's where the rubber hits the road, no pun intended. But that's what we have to think about. In addition to the issues that were mentioned by my colleague, Councilmember Campillo, I've developed a more pragmatic, if patient, way in terms of how we propose budget. As some of you may recall, earlier this year, when the heat of the Balboa Park parking was arguably at its highest, I stepped up and I said, we have to not charge San Diego residents. I thought that would resolve some of the issues associated with Balboa Park parking. It did not. But it is important to me that as we approach each budget cycle, that we set not guardrails, but some clear lines that says, what should we be entertaining? What ideas do we actually think can manifest itself into real revenue that could manifest itself into real budget cuts? And trying to set a table for more productive conversations rather than being distracted by other ideas that come up during this time. So, San Diegans deserve unfettered access to the city parking lots that serve our iconic beaches and Mission Bay Park. And I hope that we resurrect the Sunrunner shuttle. That's why we have this Sunrunner parking lot on the eastern edge. That was a remarkable idea. I wish we would resurrect that to make it easier for a fairly large dirt lot to be reopened and to give more practical access to the beach that the Sunrunner shuttle provided. When Councilmember Campillo introduced the idea, I saw an opportunity to join him in locking down our coastal parking lots. He originally suggested we do this as a ballot measure, and I saw the opportunity to pivot to an ordinance. And as one of the members of the public astutely noticed, that a ballot measure, even a simple one, would have cost the city nearly $1 million. $1 million we cannot spare. As an ordinance, we can act efficiently and effectively to preserve free parking for up to 10 years, while protecting the city's ability to regulate commercial activity, special events, parking meters, and parking-related violations. And I appreciate Councilmember Campio's willingness to entertain that and to do the work that we think is important today without spending unnecessary dollars. As an ordinance, there's essentially no cost to put this in place. And to be clear, and I think was mentioned in the presentation, there is no current proposal to charge for parking at beaches and bays. It might reside in some people's minds. And I would argue, without actually doing a poll, that there is no appetite from this council or this mayor at this time to entertain something like that and the kind of opposition that it will raise, and we will waste time and money pursuing an idea that ultimately might be withdrawn. Future electeds and other circumstances may warrant reconsideration. That is the elegance of an ordinance and having a sunset date. With these two provisions, we save money, allow for reconsideration under future circumstances, and provide operational flexibility for the city's other regulations. And I'll close with acknowledging the comments that made by members of the public that I wholeheartedly agree with. We have extraordinary challenges in terms of being back, our deficit on our infrastructure. We all hope for a better options in terms of public transit that does not exist today. And I will reject the idea that the city today in 2026 is the same city as we had in 2016. The population may not be different, but we are a much different city. Just go out and count the number of parks that we have in place today that we did not have in 2016 is just one small example. And I won't even get into the number of state unfunded mandates that we also have to comply with. So with that, I'll close there, and again, thank Councilmember Campio and second the motion. With that, we'll go next to Councilmember Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Council President. And thanks, Vic and Abby, for your work on this. I do think it's important to name this part, and Council President, you were getting to this. There was never a proposal on the table to charge San Diegans for parking. And I want to name that because in a moment where we really are looking to ways to resource the city in the way that it needs to be resourced, having red herrings floating out there in the consciousness of the public unnecessarily about things that we might charge them for does not help us move the needle when there are proposals that could bring in meaningful revenue and would not have the same sort of impact that charging them for parking at the beach would have. Just want to make sure that part is clear. There was a discussion about being able to charge folks from other cities to park at our beaches, and I think that's a worthwhile question to ask. I've mentioned this before, our lifeguards have noted that a majority of their rescues are of non-residents. And there are a variety of reasons why I think it's worth keeping open the possibility of being able to charge non-residents for parking. That being said, I understand the skepticism that we would be able to do that effectively. There is just a couple questions I had. Would this impede our ability to charge a non-resident for parking an RV at our beaches and bays?
Yes, Council President, not Council President, Council Member,
ordinance would prevent any non-resident or any other individual that is parking at either Mission Bay or our beaches from being charged for parking. So yes.
So theoretically, a whole group of RVs from out of state could decide they want to drive to Mission Bay or Ocean Beach and take up all the parking spaces with their RVs, and we wouldn't be able to charge them for that.
In theory, yes, that could happen. However, it is clearly noted in the ordinance that the lots are able to be closed overnight, and the city can close these lots overnight as well. So that would be considered a parking violation.
But during the day, those are, and there's multiple reasons of asking this. One is the practical impact. And RVs come to mind because I was thinking about Father's Day at Mission Bay, and some of the RVs that were taking up considerable amounts of parking spaces with out-of-state plates, and what that meant for access for San Diegans. I also know that, just to pull one example, Huntington Beach charges RVs $80 a day, Sunday through Thursday, $120 a day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, and holidays. And that's not nothing. And when I think about the budget situation that we're in, if we could have it, I worry that we're taking options like this off the table. I understand where the Coastal Commission is in terms of the distinction between residents and non-residents and not liking that. I am curious if they distinguish between residents of the state and non-residents of the state, because I can respect the Coastal Commission's commitment to maintaining access for Californians. I'm curious if there's been contemplation about what this means for perpetuating the subsidization of vacations for people from out of state, and are putting a barrier in place for us to be able to do that in the future.
I would just share that from what we understand, the Coastal Commission's perspective, they seem to take a rather broad view of who counts as the public. It would be interesting to see if that would change over time, but at this point it seems they incorporate that to be anyone who comes to visit the beach.
Understood. And I think, and I don't doubt that for a second. I know that the council president has engaged in those conversations. I think, again, where my head is at is just wanting to make sure that in alleviating the fear from San Diegans that we will charge them, we are taking off the table options that I think most San Diegans would agree with in terms of discouraging or at least recovering cost for out-of-state recreational vehicles to take up space in our at our beaches and bays, to not subsidize the vacations of folks who are traveling to San Diego from out of state, and want to make sure that we're being very thoughtful that we don't unnecessarily lock ourselves in on that front. And my final point on that note is just something is going to have to give when it comes to revenue, and there are big ways to do that, and I will keep saying we need to tax the rich and make tourists pay their fair share. But part of making tourists pay their fair share, I think, is like this one, especially as it relates to recreational vehicles. And I have some concerns that we are putting ourselves in a tighter box than we need to, and that's especially frustrating because San Diegans were never going to be charged for parking. That wasn't on the table, and so I'll just stop there.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Rivera. We'll go next to Council President Pro Tem Lee.
Thank you, Council President. A lot of discussion on this item. Thank you, Councilmember Rivera, for asking some questions and speaking to it. I guess maybe to follow up with that, I'll start by turning to the mayor's office, because I think it would help to have something more clear on the record, which is there currently a plan or even discussion to bring forward charging for parking in beaches and bays?
No, Council President Pro Tem, there currently is not a plan to do so.
So to go maybe even more specifically, would there be any reason to expect that the mayor might propose charging for beach or bay parking in next year's budget or his final budget in the next years?
Not at this time.
Given that case, I can't help but wonder why the need for this ordinance, and especially what others have already called out in the audience, which is the arbitrary 10-year determination to go with it. And so perhaps I'll ask the proposers of it, Council Members Campillo and Council President LaCava, is the objective here to ban parking fees because we don't trust how this administration would handle parking, given our experience with Bevel Park? I will admit I agree with that quite a bit. You've heard me vocalize it. Or because by principle, you believe that our beaches and bays should always be free for parking.
Thank you for the question, Council President Pro Tem. I'll state that by principle, I do think it should be free. That's why I offered it up as a ballot initiative for the voters to have their say on that. And I would have voted yes on that. Second of all, I would say that when we're seeing a lot of distrust from the public about the mechanisms put in place over the last several years of collecting revenue, this sends the signal that we have heard what they're saying about what they want access to, and it manifests that. And so that would be my answer to that. Council President, before you potentially jump in, I did want to point out that San Diego Municipal Code, Section 86.0132, city parking facilities, parking in marked zones and stalls, it means that it says that it's against the municipal code for a car to be parked over the line. So Council Member Elo Rivera's question about RVs is one well taken, and it's against the municipal code for RVs to park in spaces that aren't meant for passenger vehicles that fit within the lines, and there is designated RV parking at Mission Bay. So the concern he brought up about Father's Day, saw it personally, and it's a good one to point out, though the municipal code goes to address that. Thank you for your question, Council President Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So my feeling was that it is not appropriate to charge for city residents, but there's no mechanism available to us to differentiate between visitors and city residents. And as I said before, there's also just not only a philosophical, but there's a practical that you can talk about a revenue structure, you can propose a revenue structure, but if you don't actually get the revenue, you've just caused a lot of problems without actually netting anything. And I saw that as a path that we actually tried to charge residents. For me, the 10-year kind of put it beyond everybody's horizon that is currently in office, or they choose to seek re-election or election to a higher office, and put it out there. But I think it also sends a signal that it is just an ordinance, that there was contemplation that there would be a reevaluation at some point in the future. And so while I think Councilmember Campillo and I feel very strongly about the importance of having the ordinance, from a practical point of view, it is an ordinance. An ordinance can be changed if circumstances change. Coastal Commission changes its interpretation. The public sentiment changes its perception. The story we tell resonates better than it has in the past. So there's all those variables that could change. And that's one of the reasons I wanted it in an ordinance and not in a ballot measure.
Council President, can I piggyback off something you said? Sure. Pardon me, Council President Pro Tem. Just want to reiterate that it's not necessarily an arbitrary number either. It matches up with the Coastal Commission's timeline for being able to lock gates for parking lots at night. And the second point, because it's been brought up, city residents relative to tourism, relative to out of state. As I similarly said in the Balboa Park debates, I think we also shouldn't be charging county residents who I think appropriately see assets that were within the city as part of our regional assets for themselves, and treating county residents the same as people from out of state also didn't sit well with me at the time. But I appreciate your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for explaining, and I do hear the different reasons for the 10-year sort of number, and because they're different, it's hard not to feel like it's a little bit arbitrary, especially when the 10 years from the Coastal Commission for overnight parking is for overnight parking, not for daytime parking at these lots. So again, that's one place where I would have to agree. If this was really based on principle, that we believe that we should not be charging at beaches and bays, then we wouldn't put a 10-year timer on it. Like if that was the choice you wanted to make, I respect you for the value that you're trying to propose. It's my understanding, I don't know who really could answer this, but it's my understanding that we're the only city that doesn't charge for beach parking, perhaps in the region, possibly in the state. I mean, I do know our neighbors north of us certainly charge for beach parking, and the state certainly does at all of its state lots. And I just point that out because, I mean, again, I also respect the value of the access for county residents, but it's a little ironic to me when our county neighbors in other cities are charging our residents to park at their beaches, but we would never be allowed to do the same thing. Councilman LaCava, I appreciate you. Sorry, that wasn't a question for you at this point, Councilmember Campillo. Thank you, then. Council President LaCava, you specifically reminded us that you supported the idea of charging tourists from the very beginning. And I appreciate you noting that, because perhaps that is sort of where some of this was triggered, because, you know, the moment these discussions even get laid out as a potential, they create an air of discussion, and it does feel like that's what sort of created some of what's gotten us to here this point today. And I understand from what you've mentioned before that the Coastal Commission has opined that equal access to residents and visitors is really the limiting factor to whether we even consider some kind of program for visitors. And so I just want to note that I actually share the same perspective as you do, Council President, especially when it comes to the interest of protecting free access for residents to beaches and bays, especially if that's just something that we want to state as a value that we have, that we provide to residents who live in one of the most expensive places in the country. I liked the idea that we should provide free transit access to the beaches too for residents. I mean, that would seem to be a nice thing to be able to do too. I know like that might not be on the table because that's a cost, not just a prevention of something. And while we're at it, if we could and we had the funding, heck, we should make transit free for residents, period. That would make sense as well, but perhaps all of that is just some dreaming. So I guess I would note that I share some similar feelings because of the handling of Balboa Park parking. And I think that's what has driven us to this discussion today. And that is really why there's not support at this point for bringing forward some kind of implementation for paid parking for visitors. So with all of that in mind, I do actually have a request for an amendment, which is that I'm going to ask that we amend the ordinance before it goes to council to specifically apply these protections to residents. And with that, I would also suggest that we remove the 10-year sunset so that it applies in perpetuity. Now, the reason I'm going to note this is because, to your point, Council President LaCava, about the Coastal Commission, that amendment would actually better align with the principle that you have stated, which is simply that the city would not charge fees for parking at beaches and bays to our residents. We still understand that the Coastal Commission's opinion still applies. Just means that while it applies, we're sort of stuck either way, and we couldn't do both. But if they change their opinion, we don't have to come back and amend an entire ordinance just to address out-of-town visitors, which I do think has always been the intention, at least for a group of us, and should never be off the table if the ability to address oversized vehicles can be addressed through enforcement. I think that's something that should be considered. Otherwise, I too would actually ask that we consider some method by which we consider vehicle sizes when it comes to this, because again, I think that's something that we've seen other cities, state and others implement, that would make sense to implement here as well. So that's the amendment I would propose. I don't have language for it other than based on these conversations. I think it would better tie us to the principles we've all stated here today and perhaps give us something better to discuss when it comes to full council.
All right, thank you, Council President Pro Tem Lee. I'll turn it over to the maker of the motion. Do you want to accept that amendment?
There was two items you were saying?
Correct.
remunerate. I got the second one was get rid of the 10-year sunset. What was the first one?
First was to apply the ordinance specifically to protecting free parking for residents.
I see. Well, I think that there's numerous accounts of the Coastal Commission knocking that down and essentially makes it unenforceable and ultimately would delay it, as we'd have to put it through the Coastal Commission pipeline. So I would decline that one. And on the second one, though, I agree with you in principle. You know, we had the opportunity to actually make this completely rock solid with voter approval at the March committee, and you voted. I'm kind of confused where this is coming from. I'm in agreement with Council President LaCava that we want to balance locking in the access together with the lack of tying hands. And I think that his amendment is an appropriate one. So I agree with what you're pointing out there, Council President Pro Tem, in principle, but I think that it's the compromise is the better idea on the floor. So I'm going to politely decline.
Well, the maker of the motion has declined, so I'm a process guy. I think if somebody, if this council, the next council, this mayor, the next mayor wants to introduce the fact that it's an ordinance adds a process, it doesn't actually make it any harder to change it. So, which was something that was important to me. So I respect what you were trying to do and send a clear message about the things that we're talking about here that don't show up in the ordinance. And so I appreciate that, and we'll follow the maker of the motion's lead. But thank you for that.
Council President, if I could follow up with that, then I'd like to substitute a motion. I'd like to substitute a motion as presented with the amendments that we amend the ordinance to apply to residents specifically and to remove the 10-year sunset clause.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a substitute motion. If anybody knows the Roberts Rules of Order better than I do, but otherwise I think I can accept that as a valid substitute motion. So that would be by Council President Pro Tem Lee and a second by Councilmember Rivera. And we haven't heard yet from Councilmember Moreno, so I'll turn to her next.
Well, thank you for the discussion, and thank you for the presentation, and especially Committee Member Campillo LaCava for bringing this item forward. I think coastal access is a vital resource for the residents that I represent, and we're incredibly fortunate to have such a beautiful coastline in such close proximity to our communities. Obviously, the state of California has the Coastal Commission, which mandates, amongst other things, access to the coast, which I take very serious, considering when you travel abroad and see for locals to their beaches. I think that our coast is a shared public asset. I have supported efforts to keep inaccessible to all. I noted I opposed paid parking at Balboa Park since the very beginning. I think because policies like this can create barriers for families and individuals who may otherwise have limited access to open space and recreational opportunities. I think our coastline should be no different. Public access to our shore should remain free and available to everyone. My residents rely on these spaces for recreation. And so I think regardless of your income level, you should have access to our coast. With the amendment to the motion, I still haven't decided, but I don't see how this would impact the original motion. Obviously, I understand that it would limit it to, or it would open the doors for charging other folks, and obviously the sunset clause. But I guess I'll let myself ponder for a little bit and decide whether I would like to support the amendment, thank you. Can you repeat the amendment, please?
Yeah, thank you. The two segments would be one, to apply it specifically to residents, so protecting free parking for residents at our beaches and bays. Same thing with the rest of it, lighting all the locations. But the second would be to remove the sunset clause of 10 years. So that way it applies, period.
Okay.
And it's actually being introduced as a substitute motion.
I'm sorry.
It's a motion, but yeah, just.
Yeah, and to everyone's point, obviously, either way, that a future council could choose to change it, amend it, remove the ordinance, but yeah. I just don't see the point of having the 10-year clause if that's what we believe in.
But a future council could change that 10-year clause, right? If they decided. I mean, we could change it in a few months if we wanted to, right? Or you guys can change it in a few months once we accept the ordinance.
That is correct.
Okay.
There's still time for you. But as an ordinance, the council would have full discretion, whatever way one might imagine. I see Councilmember Campillo's back on the lights.
Sure, just one clarifying question on the first component of the substitute motion. When you say the free parking would apply to residents, you mean residents only?
It's specifically protecting free parking at beaches and bays for residents, correct?
Okay, I guess okay, understood, thank you.
I'll kind of jump in with the candor that I know most elected officials don't like to do, and people wonder why I do it. One of the things when you're on the outside, you get a choice about whether to answer a question or not. And when you're on the lights and in camera, sometimes you wish certain questions wouldn't be asked. But when the questions come up, you have to make a decision. And while I felt very strongly about the language that Councilmember Campillo and myself put together, and I think it was actually my idea to put the 10-year or some future cutoff period there as a bit of a signal to future elected officials. I find it a little bit difficult to disagree with the changes that the Precam has suggested there. The only question I'm going to have is for our city attorney. Is the motion clear enough to provide direction?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to always like to make sure of that. So with that, Councilmember Moreno.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and state my position here. Given the history of how the city handled Balboa Park parking and really the debacle that was made of that circumstance, I will not be supporting the motion before us today. Thank you.
Councilmember Kemp, you have a
question. So, Councilmember, you mean the substitute motion?
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, we're voting on the substitute motion first, correct? That's
Correct,
what we
yes.
have to do according to Robert's Rules of Order. So yes, the motion before us.
Okay, thank you. Real quick question, Council President. Appreciate you bringing up the portion of the 10-year sunset being part of the collaboration coming from your end of this item. I guess what if you're feeling that the idea you came forward with was one that we should remove, I appreciate that that's your suggestion and happy to follow your lead on that. I guess I would ask that we bifurcate the substitute motion into the residential only component and the sunset clause component, given that they're two completely separate modifying factors, and also because I think that the Coastal Commission aspect of the residential only amendment is basically a poison pill that is gonna have it stopped by the Coastal Commission and then ultimately undo the entire ordinance. But given that we're open-minded to extending the period from 10 years sunset to something broader, that's fine with me.
That blank look you see on my face, I didn't actually entertain the possibility that this would go to Coastal Commission.
I would ask ask the city attorney to chime in if I'm incorrect about this, but I don't believe the ordinance would have to go to coastal commission. I think if we were to create a program that did have a parking component, like a future, for example, non-resident RV program, that would have to go to coastal commission. But this ordinance, as written or as amended, I don't believe would have to get approval from the coastal commission.
Yes, Abby is correct. In the meeting that the city attorney, Kenso, and I had with the coastal commission, it was clear that this ordinance would not have to go back to coastal commission for final approval, as we are currently just preserving the current status quo.
Okay. But then maybe I'm confused a little bit about the First Amendment, then or first component of your substitute motion, Council President Pro Tem. Because we don't have language. What you would want to insert is that it is free parking for San Diego residents into the final draft before it comes to full council.
I simply suggested that we apply it to residents.
Okay.
I think we've used in other cases as well, so, but yes, I believe that would apply to city residents. That's how we define it.
You know, let the attorneys decide about the actual language, but I don't think it would say free parking for city residents. It would say the city could not charge for parking for city residents.
I see. So, very good. Thank you for that distinction. So the fundamental law would be preventing us from charging residents but not prohibiting the city from charging county residents or tourists from other states.
I mean, to simplify it, it would just be the first part of what you said, which is it would prohibit us from charging residents for parking at the beaches and bays. Beyond that, I mean, you could subject it to a bunch of interpretation. I think that's why, to your point, I mean, it is a poison pill as while the Coastal Commission decides that that alone means you can't have any program, and so be it. That's the case. But I think, again, it aligns with the stated principles that have been shared here about specifically for residents, which I think is that's where I absolutely agree with.
Okay. I think that it's very important that we not leave open the potentiality that a future council is going to try to charge county residents. The small businesses in the area rely on it so much. We saw just what happened at Balboa Park there. And so I would happily go with the council president on removing the 10-year sunset, but not on leaving open that hole. So, Council President, I would move that we bifurcate the two components so that there could be a separate vote on each of those amendments, because it's two amendments wrapped into one.
Point of order. It's a substitute motion, not an amendment.
Yeah. Okay.
Council President, I'll call the question.
All right. I think that's probably appropriate. I appreciate what you're doing. I was trying to figure out how to do that, which would have caused the we could have had the more traditional unfriendly amendments and taken those two ideas up, but you know, the substitute motion came in first. But to take their particular action. So, okay. So,
point of order, Council President.
Yeah.
A calling of the question is a motion of itself that requires a second and 2/3 of the committee to agree to it. So, I don't know if Council, are you making that motion, Council President Pro Tem, or are you just asking for a vote?
I won't have to.
I was going to call for the vote.
I need a second too. So.
Yeah. In that case, I little bit of heartburn here because I am not comfortable with leaving open the hole to allow for charging of county residents who are such an important part of our economy. Though it is, as it's been pointed out by the mayor's office, by Mr. Yagin from the mayor's office, there is no current plan for charging at Balboa Park, or excuse me, at Balboa Park and at the beaches. So I will continue to collaborate with better ideas, Council President, and vote and support, since it does remove the sunset, which was one of my original ideas, or was in alignment with an original idea I had on this when we brought it to committee in March. So while I disagree with leaving that hole, I think it moves us in a stronger direction overall.
Okay, let's go ahead, and Sarah, why don't we call for the vote? And the motion, that substitute motion passes 4-1. So I still think it's a huge change in the philosophy of the city. The original reason that was brought forward, I think with a little bit of tweak, gets a little refinement. You still have the opposition at Coastal Commission. You still have the flexibility that any elected official who thinks that the electorate will support ideas of reinstituting, which is, I think, probably the biggest lift going forward. Amending an ordinance is, I think, a little bit lower threshold, which is why I was comfortable supporting the question. So with that, that concludes this item. I want to thank everybody.
Wait, I'm confused. I'm sorry. I thought we were voting on the amendment.
No, that was actually a substitute motion.
Oh, gotcha.
You want to change your vote?
It's the
Would
same.
you please clarify for the public?
Let me just have 2 seconds here.
Okay. So for the public,
what did you vote on?
We voted on a substitute motion, which took the staff recommendation and made 2 changes. It deleted the 10-year sunset, and it said it only applied to city residents. So the city of San Diego cannot charge for parking in Mission Bay and our beach lots for city residents.
Thank you. Excellent.
Did I get that right? Okay. And that's clear for city attorney?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you. You might want to put a timer on me here.
To leave in 25 minutes, but I hope that.
It won't take 25 minutes. I'm definitely in support of not charging.
I just thought I was trying to find a place where we all seem to agree.
No, I hear you. I'll go ahead and I'll support the motion, or support the amendment, that's fine.
Okay. So we'll stand corrected. The motion is passed unanimously, 5-0. Still huge, still a big moment. We will now take up non-agenda public comment. The committee members respect and appreciate the public's input and are fully committed to protecting every participant's free speech rights at council and committee meetings. Sarah, please proceed with non-agenda public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Per Rule 2.7, non-agenda public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of this committee. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, and if you need to participate by telephone, you may dial 1-669-254-5222 and input webinar ID 160-439-9420#. We will begin with in-person testimony. Joy Senyata, you will be followed by allegedly Audra and Amanda.
This is my 3rd reading of the first minute of this. I am inspired by the words of President John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask for what you can do for your country. End of quote. All of you are at the very top of our city's organization chart. Our city has a broken system. Here are my inspired words for all of you. Ask not what your city can do for you. Ask what you can do for your city. Now, here are some examples of what you can do for our city, for your city. Speak up, roar, stand up, be heard, protest, vote, fight, rally. The examples of what you can do are endless. And lastly, if you fall off the horse, get right back up again. It was a great, great morning. Thank you so much, and love to all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is allegedly Audra.
I don't know why people watch TV. They should just watch you guys. It's interesting to see the way that you'd like do an amendment and then a substitute motion. They're exactly the same. And then you're like voting yes and then no, yes, no, like on the same thing. I don't, it's just funny to watch the way the government works. Anyway, so I want to talk about something serious, the surveillance. You know, people are, I've said this already, but regarding Flock, it's not about Flock because Axon's going to come in its place, or Gentech, whatever. That's more of a private entity, ALPR. But I think we need to be bringing forward potentially some kind of ordinance to stop this mass surveillance technology and the tracking and tracing of our movements. Because again, this data is going to people that are very extremely nefarious, that are a part of the Epstein operation, and it is disturbing just to see, you know, that coming in, and with all the data centers. I mean, we should be saying that we're not going to allow data centers to come in and take our electricity, our water, that, you know, making sure that you guys are standing against that, not bringing it in and bringing in more. And the scary thing about that with these data centers, they want to bring in more nuclear energy, and we can't even get rid of the nuclear waste that's sitting in San Onofre. That is a huge hazard. Anybody could even bomb our beach, and that would be like a huge disaster. And I told you guys yesterday, Trump is going to start nuclear weapons testing on our nation. I think we need to be very concerned when we have waste that cannot, you know, go anywhere. We're putting it in people's backyards, just they move it around. But with these data centers and everything, they're going to be looking for more energy than just your guys' green energy that would not even be able to, you know, produce power for a data center.
Thank you. Amanda?
Well, that was exciting. Since public comment was limited to 1 minute this morning, I'll finish speaking to item 2. So I feel like, just like the Superior Court ruled that you tricked us with Measure B by prejudicial abuse of discretion, I feel like you guys have done the same, or not, yeah, I think all of you guys, with Measure D. So I talked about, I didn't like the selection process. I think you guys really should look into the way they do it in Milwaukee. They have different groups, like Mr. Elo Rivera mentioned. It's a good representative. It's 7 people from different groups that are a good slice of the city. I hate that the way we've, the ordinance for Measure B, hate that we're concentrating power in the hands of the director and removes it from the commission. If we get a corrupt or biased director, that basically hog-ties the entire commission, defeats the entire purpose of having it. I think it's ridiculous that we're allowing removal by public hearing of the executive director. Again, if they're corrupt, they can just, you know, call a public hearing. If there's someone that's a squeaky wheel they want to get rid of, that gives them that option. I think we should only have 2/3 vote in order to remove someone. I also didn't like that all the language that was added to be able to remove someone. It's kind of giving like when someone gets, like a whistleblower gets fired for like ticky-tacky technicalities, I feel like it kind of opens that door. And then, lastly, I think we loved the language of having an independent counsel for the Ethics Commission. I'm sure the DAs do great work. I don't think that they should be overseeing people that they mingle with daily. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker here in the committee room is Manny Rodriguez.
Hello again. Me and my colleague Zach, who's not here anymore, would like to give major props to Council President Pro Tem Lee. Wonderful legislative action here in this committee today. I think the ordinance came out to be a more noble ordinance, one that was more true to the core, especially, keeping it free for residents and then removing a 10-year limit. I think that was probably the best outcome that could have come out of this. And Council President Pro Tem Lee, your legislative abilities made that happen today. So I just wanted to give major kudos to you for that. And one of the commenters earlier today was talking about, don't think about what the city can do for you, think about what you can do for your city. You know what you can do for your city? Pay for parking. Pay to store your big, heavy car on private property, on public property that we all own, right? That is how you can give back to your city, in my opinion. People feel like they have the right to store their metal box on wheels all over the public right away. I tend to disagree that that should be free, but that's my opinion. And that's the opinion of the urbanists. Council President Pro Tem Lee, the urbanist base, who I represent, really value your work here. So thank you very much. And thank you, Raul, for legislating. Love to see council members tackle solutions and then go on social media and communicate them. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. This concludes testimony here in the committee room. So I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those who wish to provide non-agenda public comment virtually. We currently have 11 hands raised. I'll begin the 5-minute timer and we will start with Elle Hansen. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, Lindsay Hansen here from Allied Gardens. I just want to take a moment to appreciate Supreme Court Holmes' comment that the best test of truth is the power of the thought to get self-accepted in the competition of the market. I think it was extremely valuable to hear the government officials here debate and discuss all the concerns and find a resolution that worked for the concerns and also protected residents indefinitely for free parking. And I appreciate that the debate continues. I also want to comment that I am extremely concerned about the flock over surveillance of citizens here in San Diego. It is now on almost every street corner, and I hope that we can do something to protect our community from over surveillance and also overdevelopment of the San Diego approving every developer's whim recently in the guise of affordability. I hope that also gets regulated at some point. I love affordability, but it seems to be being abused by developers right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Becky Rapp. Please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Becky Rapp, and today I'd like to address yesterday's discussion at council regarding the leased golf properties. I don't need to point out how concerning the reality of the situation is, as now we're all aware of the significant revenue left on the table. This problem isn't just about golf, but plays out a more serious problem regarding the city's lack of ability to enforce. Rules are only as good as their enforcement. We can write policies, establish requirements, and negotiate contracts, but if we don't have the staffing, oversight, and accountability necessary to enforce those rules, we are not really managing the public's assets. I see the same issue with another very profitable industry here in San Diego, and that's the marijuana industry. The city is required by law to collect its marijuana business tax, and the municipal code specifically authorizes the city to audit business records to determine the amount of tax owed. It also makes unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest a debt to the city. But where is the audit? How much money is actually owed to the city in unpaid marijuana taxes, penalties, and interest? We need an updated, comprehensive accounting. While we're having this conversation about priorities, my community pool is scheduled to close for 4 months beginning next week during extreme summer temperatures. That pool is an affordable place for our youth, seniors, and families to gather, exercise, and cool down. So I ask, why are we not investing in the people and departments responsible for making sure the city actually collects the money it's owed and enforces the rules it's established? Finding millions of dollars in missed revenue can pay for that investment many times over. So set the rules and hold city departments accountable, as well as the business they manage. And then let's open our pools, our rec centers, and our libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Ann Skelly, please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon, Rules Committee, Cheryl LaCava. My name is Terry Ann Skelly. I attend my planning group where we discuss the value of good rules and policies here in our city, especially as a parent of young adult sons and a community volunteer who work in youth programs for decades. I value the Rules Committee 2026 work plan that emphasized customer service as one of its 6 goals. Of personal and civic interest to me are 2 questions. First, whether we are receiving law enforcement decoy operations for marijuana storefronts and their deliveries, and could we have a report? Secondly, is that city code enforcement checks for the removal of all flavored inhaled marijuana products as required by the State Department of Cannabis Control, the DCC. An annual city code enforcement check at a minimum is important for these products because Department of Cannabis Control does no enforcement at all of its permittees. Both of these enforcement operations and reports to City Council would be very welcome to parents, educators, public health advocates, and others who work on behalf of our youth. It's a beginning in recognizing that there are real costs of marijuana consumption to young adults, families, neighborhoods, and society in general. Thank you, Rules Committee, for consideration of these investigations into the rules and policies associated with the marijuana marketplace. Thank you for hearing my concern today.
Thank you for your comment. The 5-minute timer has concluded with 8 hands remaining in the queue. We'll take no other callers for non-agenda public comment beyond these 8 hands raised. Continuing with Judy Strang, please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to continue the conversation that began yesterday around leases and its applicability to the Rules Committee. First, I want to thank Vivian Marino and Sean Elo Rivera for stretching out the conversation and hitting the very uncomfortable we really get fairness. I think comfortable in the room. It seemed to be that was trying to explain to you they're somewhat handicapped by the protocol and procedures of the people who do the evaluations of the property aren't them, and so forth. But as a person who's well acquainted with some of these, in this case, the golf courses, I know full well that one of those golf courses you were looking at yesterday is well used by people who are major donors to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And up to a point, I wonder if it wouldn't be political suicide to renegotiate that lease so that it's more appropriate and fair and more in compliance with the other leases for golf courses. It gave us an opportunity yesterday to shine a spotlight on it, but no one took it one step further and actually mandated a procedure and a protocol so we could go forward in making things more fair. Thank you for letting me speak to something I'm a little uncomfortable about.
Thank you for your testimony. Al Del Mastro, please unmute and begin.
Hi, my name's Al Del Mastro, and I'm calling, I'm wondering when we're gonna address the revenue issues that you guys need to stop spending. I mean, I really felt like this hearing on this parking thing is a big sellout again. This looks exactly like Balboa Park to me. That, wow, now we're gonna charge every resident $10 to prove that they're not gonna be able to, that they're able to park at the beach for free like you did at Balboa Park? Is that what's gonna happen here? Now you're gonna charge us for that? This is a shame that you guys, when are you gonna stop spending money? When are you gonna make it the city employees accountable that you represent? Like the city attorney who paid a lady 50% wage increasement, $100,000 raise, let her go on a 4-month cruise. When are you gonna address that? You know, when is that gonna be appropriate that you address these issues? How many city employees go to work every day? Or how many work from home? When does the public get to know this information? When you look at the leases that are involved in the city, it's shameful. When I watched the April 13th hearing where nobody knew if there was somebody that was supposed to vote the city like $800,000. And it took over an hour to figure out if they had paid the city or not. When is the accountability gonna come in? When I heard people like Sean Angelo Rivera said that's the other people that ran the city's issues. But he's been there 6 years. When's he gonna address that part of it? Because we really, you know, the city doesn't need to keep creating taxes for people. And pay a fee, but not to vote? What's going on here? This is completely out of line. When are you going to be accountable for your own decisions? How many years do you have to serve on this committee to realize that you're responsible? 6 years seems plenty, especially if you were city council president for at least 4 of them. When is this going to be accountable?
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our next speaker is Peggy Walker. Please unmute and begin.
Well, good morning, thank you. Because August is Substance Abuse Prevention Month and the Rules Committee is responsible for overseeing City Council legislative processes, including updating policies, I've come with a request. As rates of addiction, child poisonings, cannabis hypermesia syndrome, psychosis, and marijuana-related violence and suicide rise, I respectfully ask you to support legislation to cap THC potency in marijuana products. I presented this to the council, but I bring it to you because of your important role. Through my youth substance use prevention work, I witnessed firsthand marijuana's devastating effects on young people. Kids are especially vulnerable to today's high-potency THC due to ongoing brain development through age 26. The prefrontal cortex is especially affected by marijuana, and early pot use can have lasting effects on brain structure, function, behavior, addiction, and psychosis risk. Marijuana accounts for nearly half of admissions for youth 12 to 17 into substance use treatment, reflecting the fact Prop 64 has failed its promise to keep kids safe from marijuana access and use. Data confirm when dispensaries are located where they live, kids are more likely to use marijuana and suffer psychoses, contributing to a $52.6 billion cost for drug addiction treatment for Californians annually. Dr. Renee Lev, National Office of Drug Policy Medical Chief, has called marijuana the #1 drug of addiction. We don't want youth to access marijuana at all, but THC caps would have some impact on both youth and overall public safety and addiction. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Blair Beekman, please unmute and begin.
Hi, thank you. Communication as SDPD needs help to allow their officers the ability to work with ALPRs in real-time emergency situations. After the events at the Claremont Mesa Islamic Center, I'm still hoping we can trust that an open community process can be the best way we can all learn good new tech policies, and to make sure that SDPD doesn't take advantage of possibly new policies in ALPR real-time. These are the ways to build trusted, positive, and sustainable neighborhoods and communities. San Diego City government and SDPD should not be fearful this open public process will only give away secrets. The San Diego Commission on Police Practices has come up with a well-studied list to better address the future of pretext stops in San Diego. This incredibly important list has been developing around the country for over a decade now, and that I hope SDPD wants to follow. To better address pretext stops in San Diego can also be of much help to much limit San Diego ALPR discretionary stops and ways to make sure that SDPD does not abuse any new ALPR policies that may allow SDPD to more clearly use in the future of San Diego ALPR real-time emergency situations. Overall, can we learn to better consider any future ALPR use more in terms of specific needs, such as car thefts, child abductions, and emergency situations, and work to limit and end ALPR use for the discretionary stops of vehicles? To also ask, there currently seems to be a growing number of people around Father Joe's Villages at 14th and Imperial Avenue. Are you considering that 14th and Imperial may have the makings to become pretty crazy when the Neil Good Day Center is fully closed this November? I don't think SD City government should sell the Neil Good Day Center, as the Neil Good Day Center simply may be needed to return to service in the near future. Good luck that we can continue to consider the Neil Good Day Center and its good purposes this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 4 hands remaining, and we will continue with Madison. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, thank you. Good meeting today. I'm here again because I believe that good governance starts with making it possible for ordinary residents to participate in local government. And I've spent time speaking before this council about youth substance use, cannabis policy, and prevention. And one thing I've learned is that showing up matters. Residents who care deeply about an issue often spend hours researching, attending meetings, understanding complicated proposals, and trying to make their voices heard. That makes the work of this committee especially important. The Rules Committee oversees many of the structures that determine how residents interact with their government, including public outreach and government. So I would encourage you to continually ask whether those structures are actually working for the people who take the time to participate. Are public comments accessible? Are residents given enough information to understand what they're being asked to weigh in on? Are there meaningful opportunities for community members to raise concerns before decisions are made? Good governance isn't just about having rules, it's about having rules that create transparency, accountability, and a genuine opportunity for public participation. I appreciate the council's work on these issues, and I encourage you to keep the resident experience at the center of your governance decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie Batchke, please unmute and begin.
Hi, Natalie. I also was going to speak on about reading the agenda. It does take time, and it's hard to understand when you're first. I'm just now getting a hold of what I'm reading. So even though the items are put up ahead of time, it's a lot of work. And people have families and do their thing. It's really, maybe if there was a summarized version in regular language for people to understand so that they could participate easier, that would be awesome. I wanted to recognize yesterday the council, being aware of where big business and the rich, or whoever, where it's not coming back into the city and people not paying their fair share. It appears that eyes are starting to be opened, and it's busy. Life is busy, but I do think that there is still a disconnect. See, I've made this my priority to do this job and show up and listen and pay attention. And the people that it's affecting don't have that ability to do what I'm working on doing, and being here and participating and speaking for people who are not being heard, and at these big decisions who they affect. The narrative that's happening on homelessness and mental illness is being, gaslighted to the victims. It's not like when you're homeless, you got part of this $1 billion that they spent and just threw it away. We might have a better outcome if this money was directly handed to somebody and said, let me see what you can do with your life. These people, I didn't get any money saying like, here, go make it better. We have to make that narrative shift. And not gaslight the homeless community.
Thank you for your comment. Hector, please unmute and begin.
Thanks a lot, Hector here. Now that we know, I've known this for months, that the city is really a great landlord. If you're the tenant, the city is a great landlord. They never collect the rent. They lease it out to you forever for super cheap. You know what? The tenants aren't going to rock the boat, man. The city is a foolish landlord. You know, if you own that golf course up there and lease it out for 5% of the revenue, you guys making $9 million a year? I don't know, 19 million or something. And he's paying 800,000. You know, who's paying the property tax in that property? Maybe the city's paying it. So we're probably losing money. We gotta pay the property tax and the rent and they're only paying 800,000. Let's see the books, one page of the money, where's it going? And each one of you guys is responsible for your own council. 30% of the rent is in Council 2 has the Mission Bay. 30% of the leases are not being collected or haven't been signed or 4 years down the road or way too cheap. That's District 2's fault. You can't be blaming the rich anymore too, man. You don't have a bathroom down in Section 9. That's because the foolishness of the city for not collecting the rent that we're owed. You know, you can't blame the rich. That's just like, it's not because you're black or because you're Mexican or something. It's because the city, no one gives a shit or they just let it go. So get those kids, if they want a bathroom, let them do the negotiation. We can just tear up the lease. If you talk to a guy, it's one-page lease. None of these 400-page leases. You know, just get someone to lease to that you can have a one-page with and make it work.
Thank you. Your time has concluded. And the final speaker in our queue this morning is Shane Harris. Please unmute and provide your non-agenda public comment at this time.
Yes, I just want to provide a couple updates from my Office of the Public Advocate. First and foremost, I want to say that it was a pleasure to grant the Key to the Movement, which is a non-governmental key that my office established and has granted it to a number of individuals, including George Clinton, including Tony Atkins, and a number of others. It was my honor to grant the Key to the Movement to Brother Nick Cannon yesterday. He's a San Diego hero, a hometown hero, and someone that we truly are proud of and we appreciate. And it is someone that I implore you all to work closer with, reach out to, because this is someone who has an independent mind, who is a voice for the youth, and really has done a lot of things that people don't know, because a lot of these guys do things that people don't know about. But in case you don't know, he's poured tremendous value into the youth here in San Diego through his partnership with City Schools, through multiple giving back in multiple ways, backpacks, back to school drives, Christmas events for foster youth, you name it. So he has been a voice, and we will continue to recognize Nick Cannon's efforts nationally. Secondly, I want to commend Councilmember Raul Campillo, who was a champion, and nobody moved until he made the issue of the Mission Bay bathrooms an issue. And I want to commend you, Councilmember Campillo, for your leadership and your courage to stand up when no one was really doing anything. And I know quite how that is sometimes, taking on an issue and bringing it up, and then people come out and like this was already in the works, and it wasn't. We all know that. And then thirdly, I want to say that I really, really applaud you and Council President LaCava for today's item. I just am concerned that we're making the same mistake with county residents in the future if someone wants.
Thank you for your comment and share the queue. Is exhausted, so this concludes non-agenda public comment.
All right, thank you, Sarah, for managing that, and you always do it so well. This brings us to the end of today's agenda. I will now adjourn the meeting of the Rules Committee until the next regularly scheduled meeting to be held Wednesday, September 16th, 2026 at 9 a.m. We are